Moderator. I see that there is a sufficient number of voters here to permit us to open the meeting, and I do so declare. The meeting is called pursuant to a warrant signed by the Select Board on January 23rd, 2024. I've inspected the return of service on the warrant and find it to be in order. I declare that the meeting is properly called. This evening, the venue for the meeting will be the gymnasium. We do have the auditorium available if we run out of space in the gymnasium, but we have room for 1,000 people in here. We're very grateful to Superintendent Hunter, co-principals Miller and Stahl, and the faculty, students, and staff of the high school for accommodating us here this evening. The minutes of this meeting will be kept by the town clerk, Kari Tari, who's sitting here to my left. And the meeting will be broadcast live on our high school's radio station, WIQH 83.3 FM, on our local access cable channel 9, and live streamed on the web at minuteman.media/government and on the Minuteman Media's YouTube channel, which is accessible through the town website. I'd now like to invite Fire Chief Tom Judge to come to the podium and provide us with some safety information.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening. I'd just like to point out the exits in this room. There are exits in all four corners, including behind the screen to my left. Despite the fact that you can't see it, it is there and it is clear and accessible. If you're taking advantage of the child care in the red gym, and we do have to evacuate the auditorium, please do not go to the red gym. Proceed to the outside where the staff in the gym will reunite you with your child. And thank you and have a great town meeting.
Thank you, Chief Judge. I want to extend our thanks also to Chief Mulcahy and the officers of the Concord Police Department who are here for us this evening. Mr. Dane nominates Ms. Carolyn Flood of 1289 Main Street to serve as the deputy moderator, who will carry out the duties of the moderator if she is unable to serve. Is there a second? I see that there is. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you very much. All those opposed? That looks like a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. The meeting has elected Ms. Flood as deputy moderator, and I do so declare. Ms. Flood will be presiding in the auditorium if we need to open it, or in here in my stead if I am unable to preside over an article. I've also appointed Michael Lawson of 1695 Lowell Road as assistant moderator, and Mr. Lawson will preside in the gymnasium or in the auditorium if we need to open it, in the event that neither the moderator nor the deputy moderator is able to do so. So we have belts and suspenders and safety pins. Ms. Flood and Mr. Lawson, would you each please stand and raise your right hands? Do you swear to carry out your duties faithfully and impartially? Thank you very much. There are a variety of materials pertaining to the business of the meeting available on the tables in the cafeteria. And if you didn't bring your copy of the warrant or this year's thorough and thoughtful Finance Committee report from home, there are some extras, and there are also QR codes that would allow you to access them electronically with your mobile device if the Wi-Fi were working. So perhaps tomorrow night, that will be a thing that people can do. You will also find a green booklet entitled Town Meeting Traditions and Procedures. This is a very useful guide to the particular rules of town meeting that we observe here in Concord. If you do have any questions about town meeting procedure, please feel free to talk with our town meeting procedure resource person, who is Elise Woodward of 379 Garfield Road. She is available for a consultation on process issues and assistance in drafting and presenting motions and amendments. Ms. Woodward is seated in the front row here in the gymnasium. I'm going to ask her to stand and wave to everyone so everyone can see where she is. Thank you, Ms. Woodward. If you are a registered voter in Concord, you should have received a voting slip that looks like this. You've already had an occasion to lift it up once when you checked in. Please do keep your voting slip handy. They won't give you another one, so please don't lose it. You will need it in a visual counted vote as well as a standing counted vote, and in the event that we have a vote by paper ballot, you will need it for that. Your voting slip is what identifies you as a person who is entitled to vote here at this evening's meeting. If you are a resident of Concord who's not registered to vote or a visitor to tonight's meeting, you should have checked in as a visitor in the cafeteria. We welcome you, and you should be sitting in the visitors section, which is in the rear corner of the gymnasium here to my right. I have appointed Mr. Abe Fisher of 400 Hayward Mill Road to be head teller, Mr. Jim Summer of Pine Street as assistant head teller, and Mr. Richard Wells of 368 Lawsbrook Road to be ballot supervisor. Mr. Fisher will be supervising vote counting on the floor in the event of a counted vote, and Mr. Wells will be supervising the ballot counting procedure and vote certification in the event that the meeting votes for a paper ballot on a motion. Mr. Fisher, are the tellers ready to be sworn? Mr. Wells, are the ballot counters ready to be sworn? Excellent. Tellers and ballot counters, would you please stand and raise your right hand? Does each of you swear that you will faithfully and impartially perform your respective duties at town meeting? Thank you so much. On behalf of the meeting, I thank Mr. Fisher, Mr. Wells, Mr. Summer, and every one of the tellers and ballot counters for taking on this vital town meeting function. We also owe our gratitude to the team of people who make annual town meeting possible, including our dedicated and talented town staff, you know who you are, Minuteman Media Network, Thistle Communications, and our amazing closed caption stenographer, Stephanie Farrell. Our select board is seated on that side to my right of the gymnasium in the front. Our school committee is seated at the opposite end, and the finance committee is here to my immediate right. We also have with us this evening our town council, Mina Macarius of Anderson Krieger. He's sitting somewhere. He's over there, sitting with the select board, and he will address the meeting if we have a legal question for him. I would like to note that the members of our boards and committees are all volunteers, and they find a great deal of personal reward, not to mention many television and Zoom appearance opportunities in service to our town. If you too would like to reap these enormous rewards, do important and interesting work, make new friends, and get to know your community better, you could fill out a volunteer form. These are in the lobby, in the cafeteria, on one of the round tables, and you can review the annual town report to see how many different committees and boards we have, see what they do, see what might be of interest to you, and see where your skills might be really helpful to our town. Thank you for considering that. I would ask everyone to please stand while the Concord Minutemen bring forward the colors. Before we begin the business of this annual town meeting, as has long been our custom, let us hold a moment of silence. In any thinking and involved community, which ours here in Concord certainly is, there are bound to be different points of view among citizens of goodwill on important issues, and there's bound to be some validity in every point of view. As we deliberate on the issues before us this evening, let us remember that there's value in suspending our own opinions long enough to hear and consider the differing opinions of others. We might just change our minds. Let us embrace tonight, as members of our community here in good faith and goodwill, with whom we disagree as well as those with whom we agree, so that the debates of tonight are not a source of division among us tomorrow. Thank you, and be seated. Do you have a point of order? Could you put the con microphone on over there?
On anything. But okay, I just have a request. Can you please open the auditorium? The bleachers are just torture for 3 hours, please.
We will open the auditorium when we run out of space in here. That may be soon. Thank you. Mr. Dane moves that the reading of the warrant and the return of service thereon be omitted. Is there a second? I see that there is. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you. All those opposed, raise their voting slips. Motion carries unanimously, and I declare that that is a vote. It is our hope and goal to conclude 2024 annual town meeting by the end of Wednesday night. We have 53 articles on the annual town meeting warrant. No motion is expected on 8 articles, and 21 articles are included on the consent calendar. That leaves us with 27 articles to take up for full deliberation. I have pre-scheduled Article 34, the MBTA Community Zoning Bylaw Amendment, for tomorrow night at 7:15 p.m. In addition, we have a special town meeting warrant with 1 article to take up on Wednesday evening at 7:10, after which we will return to the remaining business on the annual town meeting warrant, with the expectation of concluding the annual town meeting on Wednesday night. Mr. Dane moves that the meeting take up no new business tonight after 10:15 p.m. and that when the meeting is adjourned, it be adjourned to resume tomorrow night, Tuesday, April 30th at 7 p.m. here at Concord Carlisle High School. Is there a second? I see that there is. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those opposed, please raise your voting slips. I'm sorry, all those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Too early for that. All those opposed, please raise your slips. That is unanimous. We'll now proceed to Article 1, choose town officers. We don't actually have any action to take under Article 1, since we choose our town officers at the town election, which this year was on March 28. The town elected Wendy Ravelli to a 3-year term on the Select Board, Cameron McKinnott to a 3-year term on the Select Board, Tracy Morano to a 3-year term on the School Committee, Andrew Herchick to a 3-year term on the School Committee, Edward Larner to a 5-year term on the Housing Authority, and yours truly, Carmen Reese, to a 1-year term as moderator. And before we proceed to Article 2, I'm just going to ask a few folks to rise so that we may take just a moment to acknowledge them. Would the following people please stand? Outgoing Select Board Chair Henry Dane. Outgoing Select Board member and former Chair Linda Escobedo. And outgoing School Committee member Court Booth. I know that you join me in thanking all of these folks for their outstanding service to our town. Thank you all. And I see that we have someone at the con microphone. Do you have a point of order, sir?
Point of order, can you tell us when the shuttle bus will stop?
When the shuttle bus will stop. It will not stop until everyone is gone from the meeting.
Will you ensure that they know that? Because they were saying 9:30. Thank you.
Ah, okay. Donna, could you check on that for us? Thank you. Moving on to Article 2. We will take up first the consent calendar, and we'll then turn to the Finance Committee report for a summary of the fiscal picture for the town. Now, the consent calendar is a handout, which you should have found out there in the hall. And do we have a slide for this, Shannon, just with the motion? Well, we'll proceed. The motion for the consent calendar is that Mr. Patel moves that the 2024 annual town meeting advance for consideration the articles in the table below, those are in the handout here, and take action on such articles without debate, provided that on the request of any 10 voters at this meeting made before the vote is taken on the motion, an article or, in the moderator's discretion, a portion thereof shall be dropped from the consent calendar and shall be acted upon in the ordinary course of business at this town meeting. Is there a second? I see that there is. Thank you very much. Now, what I will do, I will tell you that the articles that were chosen for the consent calendar after in consultation with the moderator and the select board, they have all received recommendations for affirmative action by both the select board and, if there is a monetary component, the finance committee, and all are either routine, housekeeping, or are matters that have been before town meeting multiple times and enjoyed great support. We do have 2 zoning bylaw amendments on the consent calendar. Those are recommended for affirmative action by the planning board, and because zoning bylaw amendments in most cases require a 2/3 vote for passage, the entire consent calendar requires a 2/3 vote for passage. I will now review the articles that are on the consent calendar, pause after each one, and invite anybody who wishes to place a hold to raise their ballot, and we'll see if we have 10 people. Article 2 is a motion that the town receive the 2023 annual report. Anyone wish to place a hold on that? I see none. Article 3 is the meeting procedure motion that's been made many years in a row by the Finance Committee, and you can see that motion here in the handout. Would anyone like to place a hold on this article? I see none. Article 10 is the OPEB, sorry, that's an acronym, the Other Post-Employment Benefit Trust Fund Appropriation. This is money that the town puts aside for retirement it's mostly health insurance. So, would anyone like to remove that article from the consent calendar for full discussion? Okay. I see no one. Article 11 is the OPEB trust expense. And this article just gives the ability of the town to spend some money from the OPEB fund to pay for the OPEB fund's expenses. Would anyone like to take this article off the consent calendar for full discussion? No hold. Article 12 is the appropriation of opioid settlement funds. The motion on this is to take affirmative action as printed in the warrant. This just is a necessary action to allow us to spend the money that the town has received from the state opioid settlement fund. Any hold on this one? I see none. Article 15 is establishing a permanent senior means-tested property tax exemption. This is an exemption that has been favorably acted on by town meeting a number of times. The legislature gave us temporary authority to have this in place, and we have now been given authority to have it in place permanently. Would anyone like to take this off the consent calendar for full discussion? Okay, I see no one. Article 18 is a motion to allow the select board to accept easements that don't cost us any money. The motion is that the meeting take affirmative action on Article 18 as printed in the warrant. Would anyone like to take this one off of the consent calendar? I see no one. Article 30 is an article that authorizes the select board to petition for changes to a previously approved home rule petition regarding a checkout bag charge. This home rule petition is currently pending before the legislature, and this article would add an exemption for farm stands, which it turns out are ill-equipped to comply with the bag charge. Would anyone like to take this off of the consent calendar for full discussion? I see no one. Article 32 is the fossil fuel-free demonstration bylaw amendment. The motion is that we take affirmative action on this as printed in the warrant. There are two changes. This is a previously supported and adopted bylaw by the meeting. The state program in which we will be participating in a demonstration project on fossil fuel construction regulation. It's been recommended to us that we make two changes. One is to make it applicable to affordable housing as well as other housing, and the other is to make it applicable to major renovations as well as new construction. Would anyone like to remove this article from the consent calendar for a full deliberation? Okay, I see no one. Article 36 is a zoning bylaw amendment for the floodplain conservancy district. This is something that we have to do to bring our bylaw into compliance with the federal maps, or people in Concord can't buy flood insurance. Would anyone like to take this off of the consent calendar for full deliberation? I see no one. Article 37 is a general housekeeping article in which there are multiple sections here where all kinds of spelling and punctuation and grammar issues have been tidied up throughout the bylaw. It takes up many pages of the warrant. Would anyone like to remove this from the consent calendar for full deliberation? I don't see anyone. Article 42 is tourist bylaw amendments. And this one changes the tourist bylaw to edit the language for gender neutrality, and it clarifies that the bylaw does require a license for all tour guide services using vehicles and soliciting tourists. Would anyone like to take this off the consent calendar for full deliberation? Okay, I see no one. Article 43 seeks to amend the departmental revolving funds bylaw to add an ambulance revolving fund. Would anyone like to take this off of the consent calendar? I see no one. Article 44 is a routine action to authorize the expenditure of revolving funds, which town meeting has to take in order for those funds to be able to spend the money on the task that they were created for. Would anyone like to take this off of the consent calendar? I don't see anyone. Article 45 is the light plant expenditures and payment in lieu of taxes. This is a routine action that authorizes the light fund to use its operating cash for its operations, and also authorizes the light plant to make a payment in lieu of taxes to the town. We do this every year. Would anyone like to remove this for full deliberation? I see no one. Article 46 is solid waste disposal and fund expenditures. This again allows as a routine action that allows the solid waste fund to spend the fees it collects on collecting solid waste. Would anyone like to remove this for full deliberation? Okay, I see no one. Article 47 is sewer system expenditures. Again, this is an action by town meeting to authorize the Public Works Department to use the fees collected for the sewers on the sewer system. Would anyone like to remove this for a full deliberation? Okay, I see no one. Article 48 is sewer improvement fund expenditures. The motion here is that we take affirmative action as printed in the warrant, and the sewer improvement fund is a sub-fund of the sewer fund that is made up of fees paid by new connections to the sewer system. And this article authorizes the expenditure of those funds for construction and expansion of sewer lines. Would anyone like to take this one off the consent calendar? Okay, I see no one. Article 50 authorizes expenditure from the PEG, that is Public Educational and Government, Access and Cable-Related Fund. These are the monies that we get from the cable company, Comcast, and this town meeting action allows us to spend these monies out of the fund that we collect from Comcast on PEG access and cable-related expenses. Would anyone like to remove this one? Thank you. Okay, no one wishes to remove that. Thank you. And I've just been, it's just been pointed out that I skipped Article 49, water system expenditures. This again allows the cash on hand in the water fund to be spent for the operation, maintenance, and improvement of the town's water system. Would anyone like to remove this for a full deliberation? Okay. And then finally, Article 51 is the BD Swim and Fitness Center Enterprise Fund and expenditures. The money is coming from a bunch of different places here: the community pool enterprise receipts, interest income and endowment, the community pool enterprise certified retained earnings, and all of this money will be spent for the operation of the community pool. Okay. Would anyone like to remove that from the consent calendar? Okay. All right, we're ready to proceed to a vote on the consent calendar, but I've just been informed by the town clerk that we are at capacity here in the gymnasium, and so we will open the auditorium. But if you wish to vote on the consent calendar, stay right here in your seat. Don't go to the auditorium because you have to be here in a seat in order to vote on the consent calendar. So please do take a seat if you're in here and you wish to vote on the consent calendar. Okay, all those in favor, and I'll remind you this requires a 2/3 vote, all those in favor of the consent calendar? Thank you very much. All those opposed? That is a unanimous vote in favor of the consent calendar, and I do so declare. We'll now proceed to hear from the Finance Committee. The chair, Mr. Patel, will come and he will give us a brief summary of the Finance Committee report, which you should have received at your house, and there are extra copies outside. And Mr. Patel will present us with some highlights.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Can I get the first slide, please? Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Moderator and fellow residents. On behalf of the Finance Committee, it's my pleasure to present an overview of our 2024 annual report. The Finance Committee's primary responsibility is to make recommendations and set budget guidelines for the town and schools so that Concord can maintain and strengthen our long-term financial health. Next slide. In doing so, we keep several objectives in mind. We seek to avoid general overrides. We strive to maintain an adequate free cash balance, which is why this year we chose not to recommend the use of $1 million from free cash to reduce property taxes. We recognize that infrastructure is vital, so we encourage the town and schools to invest in ongoing capital needs. While meeting these fiscal objectives, we also seek to avoid burdening taxpayers beyond projected growth and income and maintain Concord's character, including the economic diversity of residents. In short, we seek to ensure that residents and businesses aren't driven out because they can't afford Concord. So for this year, we should expect substantial property tax increases. There's no other way to say this. For many years, we've had good economic growth and prudent fiscal management that enabled low growth in property taxes. Unfortunately, the era of low property tax growth has ended. Growth in town and school expenses at 4.2% is expected to be faster than in recent years, which was growing at about 3%. Meanwhile, growth in state aid, grants, and other non-property tax revenue is slowing. The difference has to be made up by increasing property taxes. And because 93% of property tax revenues comes from residential properties, the burden will primarily fall on residents. Next slide. As you can see here, we're projecting a 7.9% annual increase per year in median tax bill. Let me repeat that, 7.9% per year for the next 5 years. Next slide. That doesn't actually include the impact of future projects, right? This is a list that you see on the screen that's been discussed the last couple of years by the town and the schools. Note that we're not talking about $1 million here and $1 million there. We're talking about not $100 million, if not more, that are going to be coming in the next 5 to 7 years. Next slide. And the 7.9% increase doesn't include the increases in our water bill and other fees that we'll be discussing later during town meeting today. Next slide. So what do? If we want to lower property taxes and try to make sure that Concord doesn't become an unaffordable place for many of us, elected town and school leaders should develop a strategic plan to prioritize competing demand for resources. When will we undertake the projects described a few minutes ago? Which ones should take a higher priority over others? Some, in fact, may have to be shoved. Leaders should also begin to moderate spending growth. And residents will have to make difficult choices among competing demands. We shouldn't always get what we want. We should also make your voices heard and vote. This year, I think, was a good start. We had turnout of over 30% in our local election. We need to have higher turnout next year and every year thereafter. Finally, do what you're doing now. Actively participate in town meeting this year and every year you choose to make Concord your home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. We have addressed Article 3 on the consent calendar, and we'll now take up Article 4. And can we have the motion for Article 4, please? The motion is that Ms. Cobbs moves that the town take affirmative action on Article 4 as printed in the handout, and there is a handout out in the hall for this article. Ms. Cobbs, are you here? Can we have a second for the motion, please? I see that we have one. Thank you. Ms. Cobbs.
Okay, thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm Liz Cobbs, and I am a co-chair of the Personnel Board here in town. and I am here representing the Personnel Board tonight. So I move that the town take affirmative action on Article 4 as printed in the handout. So it was updated, so you have a handout here this evening, and that's what you should look to if you have any questions. Okay, next slide. So the classification actions that are identified in our Article 4 are amendments to a plan which either add or delete job titles, assign a title to a salary range, or reassigns a title from one salary range to another. And please note that this does not approve the funding. That's a separate issue which is subject to town meeting approval under the general fund and enterprise fund budgets. Okay? I should note that the Personnel Board is supportive of the town manager and the HR department specifically for non-union regular employees of the town. So that's quite a large grouping, but they're not part of the unionized town employees. Okay, next slide, please. So actions are necessary when the town manager creates a new position, the duties of an existing position change in a significant manner, or a position or title needs to be updated. For these non-union regular employees, there are a lot of these small changes that take place over the year, and that's where the Personnel Board works to support the HR department and the town manager in making these decisions. One example that we had this year was swim aids. So of course during COVID, there was a hiatus on lessons for swimming. And so the town manager was endeavoring to improve on that situation so there would be enough positions for students to learn to swim in a timely manner after that hiatus. So the swim aid positions were created. So that gives you a flavor of some of the changes that are made on a regular basis that the Personnel Board supports. Next slide, please. So results of these actions maintain the appropriate job titles and salary ranges, and it also allows the town to attract and retain competent employees and comply with the pay equity laws. And as those change over time, that's where the Personnel Board supports those changes in a timely manner for the town. All right, so next slide, please. Our first recommendation on Article 4 is that the Personnel Board recommends affirmative action on Article 4 as printed in the handout that you have this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now invite questions and comments from the floor. And Ms. Cobbs, in case there are any questions for you to answer, we have a couple of chairs right there. You can just hang out so you aren't far away. We have 3 microphones available here in the gymnasium, and we have 1 microphone available in the auditorium. This evening we have pro and con microphones here in the gymnasium. The con microphone is labeled, and it's over there to my right, and the pro microphone is over here on this side. And in the middle, that's a microphone for questions. If you just have a question, not a point of view that you necessarily want to share. Okay. All the mics can be adjusted to be accessible. Just give us a shout out or a wave if you need us to help you adjust a mic. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. The clock on the screen will count down your time. And I've brought back the bell. And the bell will gently remind you if you have gotten to the end of your time. And we will try and strictly enforce time limits this evening because we have a lot of people here who will want to speak, and we want everyone to have a chance. So let us all bear in mind that we are here for the serious business of conducting our legislative work for the town of Concord, and we have no place for clapping, booing, cheering, or other sorts of demonstrations. And while we do expect the discussion to be rigorous on the issues, it should be gentle on the people. Okay. Please state your name and address when you're recognized and direct your remarks to me. And if we have a question, I'll call on the appropriate person to come and answer questions. And you will win the gratitude and affection of all your fellow citizens if you keep your comments focused and concise. I don't see anyone at a microphone with a question in here. Let me ask if there's anyone in the
No one standing here.
All right, well, it looks like we're ready to proceed to a vote on this then. We require a majority vote on this article. All those in favor of Article 4, as moved in the handout, thank you very much. All those opposed? It's unanimous in the gymnasium.
Appears to be unanimous as well in the
All
auditorium.
right, so that is unanimous vote, and I do so declare. We'll next proceed to Article 5. A good thing you didn't go away, Ms. Cobbs. We'll put that motion up on the screen.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
And this one again is moved as printed in the handout, affirmative action as printed in the handout, which you should have collected out in the gymnasium. Could we have a second for the motion, please? Thank you. I see that we have one. Ms. Cobbs?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. So Article 5, I again here represent as co-chair of the Personnel Board. And as that representative, I move that the town take affirmative action on Article 5 as printed in the handout that you have before you. And next slide. So clarification, Article 5 does not cover, again, how much money is spent on salaries. What it does do, and what the Personnel Board works with the town manager and HR department on, is items that are still subject to approval by the Personnel Board. And those include job titles, the groupings or grades of positions, and the salary ranges. So next slide. The objective of a classification and compensation plan considers the uniformity of salary ranges based on the job responsibilities and requirements, equal pay for equal work, the internal equity across departments, as well as the external competitiveness with salaries in other like size and configuration of local towns. External competitiveness is also supported with comparability with salaries of the unionized employees. So while we don't work with the unionized employees as part of the Personnel Board responsibilities, we do make sure that there's an alignment and some understanding of how those two sets of compensation plans would align. Okay. Some components of the plan. The classification is really the job evaluation, and that is really focusing on the internal equity of these positions. And the compensation side is really a salary survey, and that is where the external competitiveness and benchmarking of positions in the comparable communities take place. I'd like to add that last year, in front of town meeting, we had approval of a full review of a classification and compensation plan. The time that had passed was too long since the last one. It was 2007 when we were able to do a full revamp of the CNC plan. So we were delighted to have the chance as a Personnel Board to work with the town manager and the HR department to ensure that we could update and really take care of the employees of the town that support all of us in the work that they do for the town. And next slide. So the updated plan we provided for the town meeting in handout has the most current version of the plan that had to be updated since the warrant. So what we do as the Personnel Board is we oversee any of the changes that align the positions as explained here with the CNC plan, and those are now in front of you in the updated handout. So the recommendation, in the next slide, is that Personnel Board recommends affirmative action on Article 5 as printed in the warrant and in the updated filing with the town clerk and as presented for amendment here at town meeting. Next slide.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cobbs. We'll now open the floor to questions and comments. Is there anyone who has a question or a comment on Article 5? Anyone in the auditorium? I don't see.
No,
Okay.
I don't see anybody standing. Oops, I see somebody raising their hand. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. They're just putting in a second microphone, and he is coming to it right now. We, can you hear him?
Yes, we can hear you.
No, you can hear me. Can you hear the person who was speaking from the microphone?
Oh, we cannot.
Hello, Jim
Yes.
Chopis, 47 Woodland Road. Had a quick question. There's not a comparison of what the rates were in the prior year. What was the average increase year over year?
Do you know the answer to that?
So I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Average increase in salaries year over year, is that the question from the gentleman in the auditorium?
That's correct. What level by level, what was the average increase?
So with the classification and compensation plan, what we work on is the salary ranges, and each department then has their own decisions to make in terms of specific salary increases that go forward. Okay?
I understand, but did the ranges increase by a certain percentage, or just trying to get a sense directionally in terms of how much the ranges went up?
The ranges in the full change in the class and compensation plan from last year, I don't have a figure this. Sorry.
Well,
Sorry, hold
maybe
on, we're gonna.
We may hear from the town manager here.
Yeah, thank you. There's no change this year. Yeah, okay. So there's no change in the ranges this year from the changes that I presented here this evening. The ranges have stayed the same this year.
The ranges had stayed the same this year in comparison to last year?
That's right.
Okay, great, thank you.
I don't see anyone in the gymnasium wishing to speak on this. Anyone else in the auditorium?
No one else at the moment, no.
Okay, looks like we are ready for a vote. All those in favor of Article 5, ratification of the Personnel Board Classification and Compensation Plan, thank you very much. All those opposed? Okay. It is near unanimous in the gymnasium. How about in the auditorium?
It appeared to be unanimous in favor here.
Okay, so we'll record that as a near unanimous vote, and I do so declare. We'll now move on to Article 6. And in Article 6, Ms. Cobbs moves that the town take affirmative action on Article 6 as printed in the warrant, and these are personnel bylaw amendments. We have the presentation for this. I'm not actually seeing it.
It's not up in the front. It's on the sides, not in the front.
Oh, okay. Well, everyone else can see it. That's fine. Go right ahead.
Okay. So usually at town meeting, we have Article 4 and 5 is just presented. Article 6 is a bit unusual, and that is the personnel bylaw amendments. So as on behalf of the Personnel Board, I move that the town take affirmative action on Article 6 as printed in the warrant. Okay? The background here. The personnel bylaw has been revised in accordance with the recommendations of the Personnel Study Task Force report that was dated September 26, 2022. So you can see that some time has passed since we were able to really finalize and work through the bylaw and make these updates. Over time, there have been periodic limited revisions over the last several decades, and the comprehensive and updated revision was really necessary. I'd personally, and for our Personnel Board, like to thank the Personnel Study Task Force, the Town Manager, the HR Department, and our Select Board supporters. This has been a very important piece of work that we could do to really support our non-union regular employees of the town and ensure that they have an easier way to understand the benefits that are overseeing their work. So next slide, please. The intent of the changes in revising the personnel bylaw was the development of a comprehensive employee handbook. Now, there'll be seamless alignment, hopefully with approval this evening of the town. The personnel policy and procedure number 43 will be ready to go and be implemented. And so that what is taken out of the bylaw this evening will be available to the employees and will be overseen by the HR department and our town manager with the support of the personnel board. So the intent of changes continuing, employees' review and comment and questions were all incorporated into the changes in the bylaw, which was very important so that they could understand what those changes might do to impact their non-wage provisions and what they might be able to do going forward to understand any new changes that might come in the non-wage provisions. All right, next slide. So non-wage provisions, in particular, the updated bylaw would shift the following non-wage provisions to the personnel policies and procedures I just mentioned. And these changes, therefore, would not require coming to town meeting for approval. So I'll give you a minute to look over the list that's on the slide here. There's quite a list there, but these are non-wage related provisions. And what had been happening is something would change at the state level, and we would need to come back to town meeting before we could move forward and support our non-wage employees, non-union regular employees. So these changes now will be in a personnel policy and procedure that can have more intimate oversight by the town manager and the HR department. Next slide, please. So our recommendation is that Personnel Board recommends affirmative action on Article 6 as printed in the warrant. And there you can see the full bylaw and how it's revised. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Could we have a second for the motion? I see that we have one. Thank you very much. And we'll now open the floor to questions and comments on Article 6. Pardon me, we will not open the floor. We will hear from the Select Board. Mr. Howell will address us. Thank you, Mr. Howell.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Mark Howell, Linners Neck Hill Road, speaking for the Select Board. The Personnel Board, acting on the recommendations of the Personnel Study Task Force and working closely with the Town Manager and Interim HR Director, has developed the most substantial update to the Personnel Bylaw in decades. We thank them for their efforts. This bylaw replacement streamlines the maintenance of non-wage employment provisions impacting non-union staff. These changes have been publicized amongst affected employees, and they represent a commitment to best practices and improvement. This is also part of a larger effort to modernize the process and the procedures related to employment management. The Select Board recommends affirmative action on Article 6.
Thank you, Mr. Howell. And now we will open the floor to questions and comments. Is there anyone here in the gymnasium? I don't see anyone. Anyone in the auditorium?
Maybe? Nope, he walked by. Nobody had a microphone.
Yeah, well, it was a fake, huh?
Yes.
Okay. Looks like we're ready to proceed to a vote on Article 6. Would all those in favor of Article 6 please raise their voting slips? Thank you very much. All those opposed? That is unanimous in the gymnasium. How is it in the auditorium?
Unanimous in the auditorium as well.
All right, that's a unanimous vote, and I do so declare. We will now proceed to Article 7. Thank you, Ms. Cobbs. We'll now proceed to Article 7, which is the budget line item adjustments. And the motion here is that Mr. Dane moves that the town amend the appropriations made under Article 9 of 2023 annual town meeting, the town budget, as printed in the handout. And I will note that the Finance Committee recommends affirmative action on this article. We have the motion. Can we have a second, please? I see that we have one. Thank you. Ms. LaFleur.
Thank you and good evening. This article seeks town meeting approval to make certain line item adjustments in the fiscal '24 budget approved under Article 9 of the 2023 annual town meeting to rebalance the budget within the original budget appropriation. There is a handout that was available at the front of the room. Unlike other operating budgets, the school budget and enterprise fund budgets, for example, the town's fiscal '24 budget was appropriated by town meeting in 16 distinct line items. Lines 1 through 11 appropriated what is commonly referred to as the guidelines budget, and lines 12 through 16 appropriate what are referred to as the fixed costs, which are shared between the town and Concord Public Schools. Once appropriated, the town manager must then manage to the bottom line of each line item appropriation rather than to the bottom line of the budget appropriation. Adjustments to the town's budget are then only allowed either by further town meeting action, which is what is before you this evening, or under the authority allowed in Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 33B. These remedies are listed in the legally preferred order, meaning that if there's an opportunity to bring this before town meeting to take up budget transfers, that is what is preferred versus the authorization that is allowed at the end of the year under the statute. So budgets are prepared well in advance of the fiscal year. Often circumstances change and priorities shift, resulting in inadequate funding within appropriated lines. In this particular case, as was noted at last year's annual town meeting, very late in the budget process, an error was discovered which resulted in the over-allocation of about $515,000 in new money to the town under the Finance Committee's fiscal '24 guideline. Due to the timing of this discovery, the full adjustment was actually posted against line item 1, which is general government, with a note that corrective action would follow at this year's town meeting, and that's what's being presented here this evening. The proposed adjustments are shown in this chart. As you can see, we first proposed to reverse the placeholder adjustment posted against line item 1 by initially increasing that line item, and then second, instead replacing it with the various budget reductions or decreases which are in rough proportion to each line item share of the overall operating budget. You may wonder, will budget adjustments at this point impact service levels? And in short, no, we do not anticipate any service level reductions because we went into this budget with the knowledge that we needed to make these budget adjustments at some point. The required adjustments will generally be absorbed by planned underspending in line items and savings realized from position openings and through attrition. The proposed budget adjustments here have also been taken into account when we put together our fiscal '25 budget. If this isn't approved this evening, our second recourse would then be at year end through Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 33B, with the approval of the Finance Committee and Select Board. But again, the best thing to do is to bring it before town meeting before pursuing that other option. So again, we're requesting the budget adjustments that were proposed on the chart shown 2 slides back. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaFleur. We'll open the floor now for questions and comments. I don't see any in the gymnasium. How about in the auditorium?
Nobody at a microphone.
Okay, looks like we're ready for a vote. This was a nominee for the consent calendar. It actually wouldn't fit because it was so large, but so all those in favor of Article 7, thank you very much. All those opposed? That is unanimous in the gymnasium. How is it in the auditorium, Ms. Flood?
No one opposed in the auditorium.
All right, that is a unanimous vote, and I do so declare. And we'll now proceed to Article 8. Article 8 is the town budget, and the motion here is that Mr. Dane moves that the town take affirmative action on Article 8 as printed in the warrant. May we have a second for the motion? I see that we do. Ms. LaFleur.
Thank you. Okay. Article 8 requests that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $59,674,465 for the operation of town departments and joint accounts for fiscal '25. Due to the length of the motion, a handout has been provided for reference. Again, unlike other operating budgets, the town's budget is appropriated by town meeting in 14 distinct line items. Lines 1 through 11 appropriate what is commonly referred to as the guidelines budget, and lines 12 through 14 appropriate the fixed costs, again, those costs shared between the town and Concord Public Schools. Once appropriated, the town manager must then manage to the bottom line of each line item appropriation. The town's budget process is a lengthy one, beginning in early fall and concluding in late February in time for the public hearing process in March. The fiscal '25 budget process began in earnest in October, and through a series of internal meetings with department managers and then meetings with the Finance Committee and Select Board has resulted in the recommended budget being presented this evening. This slide highlights key budget dates. Historically, the Finance Committee's guideline process has included review of both the operating budget and Tier 1 capital expenditure plan. The fiscal '25 guideline provided for a 3.26% increase, or an additional $1.04 million for the operating budget, and a 26.38% increase, or an additional $455,000 for capital spending. The overall increase provided under the FinCom guideline for fiscal '25 for the town is 4.45%, or $1.48 million. We began our fiscal '25 budget process, as we do each year, by identifying our top strategic issues, which are noted on this slide. We then built our entire budget process around addressing them to the best ability within the funding increase allotted. Next, we identified cost drivers, which are also noted here. More than 50% of the budget increase will go towards wage adjustments to more closely align salaries to market and to increase our ability both to retain existing employees and attract qualified candidates for vacant positions. At its core, the annual budget is arguably the most important policy document a community produces, reflecting its commitments, values, and priorities. This year, as managers built their budgets, they were asked to pay particular attention to viewing and evaluating their proposals through two specific lenses, reflecting our commitment to equity and inclusion, and sustainability and resilience. To that end, we strove to be both intentional and deliberately inclusive in our budget-making process, keeping in mind that it is not one action or initiative, but rather a considered expression of the values our organization holds, which should inform and guide the decision-making process towards a more diverse and resilient Concord. One effort that has emerged through this lens is the focus on equitable mental health services. The Concord Behavioral Health Collaborative, which is a town-wide effort led by our Division of Public Health, was created to identify the mental health and substance use needs of the community. The group, which includes representatives from many departments in the Concord Public Schools, identified the prominent need to support Concord residents in crisis. Through this collaboration, existing budget was reprogrammed in fiscal '24, allowing for a partnership with the Elliott Community Health Services to hire a dedicated clinician to support Concord residents of all ages. And a further commitment was made to fund this program on an ongoing basis. Given all of the challenges and opportunities presented before us, I'm pleased to say that we've prepared a fiscal '25 budget recommendation that meets the FinCom guidelines, generally maintains existing service levels, and does not add to our FTE count, though we are going through a careful and considered review of the organization to right-size and meet current needs, which has resulted in the reclassification of some positions. The chart on this slide shows the proposed funding allocations for each department. The movement in percent allocation is often a result of reorganization or consolidated services. For example, the large increase shown here in the general government share of the budget is generally attributable to a funding level dedicated to our facilities division, which from an accounting perspective is part of general government, even though from an operational perspective it functions under public works. Over the past 5 years, the town has incrementally moved towards a more centralized service delivery method, which has resulted in a better product at a better price point. The balance of the budget proposal increase is for our joint accounts, such as insurance, debt service, and retirement expense. These items totaling $26.9 million, or just over 45% of the town's budget, are summarized here on slide 8. The second largest expense in this category is for group insurance, consisting of the employer's share of health, dental, and life insurance benefits provided to the town and CPS employees and its retirees. For many years, the town has contracted health insurance through the Minuteman Neshoba Health Group, which is a consortium of 14 communities and regional school districts. For fiscal '25, the town will be moving its health insurance business to MIA, which is the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association, a much larger joint purchasing cooperative. In addition to the opportunity to spread risk across a larger pool, MIA offers competitive rates, high deductible plans, and access to many health and wellness programs, while still retaining the ability to customize coverage to suit the needs of the town, its employees, and retirees. The largest expense in our fixed cost category is for debt service. This category includes annual debt service payments associated both within the levy and excluded debt. In total, the town's fiscal '25 debt service expense is projected to be just over $14.5 million, which includes permanent financing of approximately 60% of the cost of the middle school project. Of this total, approximately $11 million is appropriated here, with the balance of about $3.5 million appropriated as part of our annual regional school district assessments. To recap, the budget request includes the level of funding needed to support the existing services and to meet growing needs. It provides funding to address our identified strategic issues and restores adequate funding to replace equipment and vehicles. While we do expect fiscal '25 to be a particularly challenging budget year, we also recognize and respect the need to balance all spending, both operating and capital, against the financial burden placed upon our taxpayers. We respectfully ask for your support of Article 8. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. LaFleur. We'll hear from Mr. Dane, I believe, on behalf of the Select Board. No? No. Okay, we will not hear from Mr. Dane. I will note that the Select Board and the Finance Committee both recommend affirmative action on Article 8. We'll open the floor now to questions and comments. I don't see any in the gymnasium. How about the auditorium?
There is nobody at a microphone in here.
All right, looks like we are ready to proceed to a vote on Article 8, the town budget. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you very much. All those opposed? Okay, that is near unanimous in the gymnasium. How about
Likewise in the auditorium.
Okay, so Article 8 passes by a near unanimous vote, and I do so declare. We'll now proceed to Article 9, the Capital Improvement and Debt Plan. And I think, do we have the motion for this?
It's not showing up here.
Okay, so There we go. All right, so you see the motion there on the screen. I will note that because borrowing is involved here, this article requires a 2/3 vote. May we have a second for the motion? I see that we have one. Thank you. Ms. LaFleur.
Thank you. Article 9 requests that town meeting appropriate funds and authorize debt for the fiscal '25 capital improvement plan as printed in the warrant. Much like the annual budget process, the town's capital planning process is extensive, beginning in late summer and resulting in a draft plan which is available in December. The town separates its capital spending into 3 categories. Spending authorization sought for tiers 1 and 2 is included in this article. Tier 1 spending is funded through an outlay of cash, while Tier 2 spending is funded through the issuance of debt. The total request for Tier 1 is $2,180,000, as detailed on this slide, and is in compliance with the town's policy on capital outlay expenditures. The proposed plan requests $268,000 for capital items for divisions under the General Government and Finance cost centers, all of which is earmarked for technology, including replacement of computers, security improvements, including the purchase of a suite of cybersecurity hardware and software, and evaluating building security. The plan includes $120,000 for the Department of Planning and Land Management, $153,000 for Human Services, including $15,000 to support the replacement of the public use computers at the library. For public safety, the plan includes $509,700 for replacement of vehicles and equipment for our public safety cost center. A total of $1,129,300 is set aside in the fiscal '25 capital improvement plan for the Public Works Cost Center. The projects proposed include maintenance of roads and bridges, completion of the new tree inventory, and additional tree planting and replacement of vehicles and equipment. The total request for Tier 2 debt finance projects is $4.1 million, as detailed on this slide, and is in compliance with the town's policy on capital debt purchases. The capital request for public safety includes $350,000 to upgrade the records management system for the police department and $418,200 for upgrades to the communications center. The current records management system is over 20 years old, nearing end of life, and support from the vendor will be limited in the future. A modern records management system will increase efficiencies within the department and result in better service to the community. Similarly, the current software equipment in the dispatch center and at the emergency communication repeater sites is nearing end of life and in need of replacement. Our vendor has completed its assessment, which includes a comprehensive analysis of the systems being used and identified which equipment needs to be replaced. The scope of this project also includes replacement of existing cruiser radios and portable radios. The request here is for $336,500 to address the significant repairs needed at 3 municipal lots, Rideout Park, Church Street, and the Tuttle Trail parking off of Walden Street. An annual budget in a similar amount will be needed to address the needs of the 19 municipal parking lots over a 5-year period. In the fall of 2022, the town completed a resurvey of a 12% sample of roads to gauge the pavement condition index scores and found that the average road PCI at that time was 68. It further determined that the current level of spending was insufficient to prevent further deterioration of our 108 miles of roadway. As it stands today, our PCI has dropped to 66. The longer we go before making the financial commitment that is needed to maintain our roadway systems in good repair, the more costly it will be. In fiscal '25, a total of $2,120,300 is being sought for the annual pavement management plan. In the fiscal '24 capital improvement plan, the town allocated funding for the design of an improved intersection at Main Street and Baker Ave, shown on this slide. The project includes replacement of the obsolete signals and enhanced safety and intersection operations. The additional funding sought here, along with the anticipated contribution from the Novo 40B project applicant, will be used to implement the final design. An annual budget is needed to address other intersections in future years. CPW provides a variety of essential services to the community. Its fleet of vehicles and heavy equipment are critical assets to deliver these services efficiently and effectively. The American Public Works Association provides guidance on the replacement of fleet assets based upon asset type and the expected equipment life. This information is used then to help determine whether it's more economical to retain an asset or to replace it. In the case of this 2012 heavy-duty service truck shown here, it has been determined that replacement is now in order. On behalf of the town staff, I ask for your support of Article 9 to fund the town's fiscal '25 capital improvement plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. LaFleur. Does anyone from the Select Board wish to address this? No. All right. And I think I already noted that both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on this article. We'll now open the floor to questions and comments. I don't see any. Wait. You're at a con microphone. Is that where you wish to be?
I think
Maybe.
maybe.
All right. Ms. Dritt,
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green.
please proceed.
I want to remind the police department and all the public works departments that hybrids are just as much of a 10-year at least investment in fossil fuel infrastructure. And they are not cheaper than all electric vehicles. And we should make a concerted effort to adopt all electric vehicles, even with heavy trucks. You'd be surprised at the amount of new companies who are making them that already exist are. Please don't buy hybrid cruisers, buy all electric cruisers. They are just as cheap and they are better. And that's not even including all of the benefits we get from the reduction in carbon emissions and health for the people of the town.
Thank you, Ms. Dritt. And I see we have two people at the questions microphone, sir, and that's the one in the middle here.
I'm Robert Simon, 13 Davis Court.
Mr. Simon.
I'm concerned about the roads in Concord, and I realize there's $2+ million allocated to that. Whatever it is, I have the feeling that it's not enough. When I drive around Concord, I look like a drunken driver trying to avoid one pothole after another that could be 2, 3, even 4 inches or more in depth. My car pays a toll on that, which means I pay a toll on that. And so I heard just with the last presenter that the streets need to be maintained, and the more that we fall behind in doing that, the more expensive it's going to become. So my question is there a plan to increase that allocation so we can have roads that don't look like third world roads?
Thank you very much. Ms. LaFleur, would you like to take that?
Thank you. The amount of funding that we need on an annual basis is at least double what we have been setting aside. We do expect to bring to the 2025 annual town meeting a more comprehensive plan for long-term financing for roads. The reason that we held off doing that this year is because our Transportation Advisory Committee is in the middle of a transportation study, and we thought the information from that study would also help inform the amount of funding, the funding request, the full funding request that we would need to bring to the town. So we do recognize that it's not enough, at least by half, and we hope to bring a comprehensive plan next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LaFleur. We'll stay right here at the question microphone next.
Ann Humphrey, 468 Old Bedford Road.
Ms. Humphrey?
This gentleman actually said pretty much what I was thinking, but let me just add one little bit. Yes, it is like doing a dance to get around all the things, particularly on Main Street. And I just want to urge the town to do a very good job of repairing Main Street and not letting all the potholes keep coming back time after time. We're coming into our 250th celebration, and frankly, I'm embarrassed it didn't look good this year for April 19th, and I'd be truly embarrassed if the town streets, Main Streets, weren't in good condition for the 250th.
Thank you very much. And we'll stay here. Next question.
Thank you. Paul Bohm, 11 Ridgewood Road. The capital budget has improvements at the intersection of Main Street and Baker Avenue. And you did mention that you were requesting a small contribution from the Novo project. Given the potential traffic impacts of Novo, I'm just wondering what that small contribution is, and is that required? Is it mandatory? What's the thinking on the contribution?
Ms. LaFleur, I see you looking down the road here.
I am. I do know a specific amount was included in the decision, and I'm hoping one of my staff members can give me that exact amount. Elizabeth Hughes, Town Planner, thank you.
Madam
Ms. Hughes.
Moderator. Elizabeth Hughes, Concord Town Planner. The Novo decision does include, as part of that decision, a condition the applicant has agreed to provide $100,000 towards the Main Street Baker Ave improvements.
Thank you very much.
So that is part of the application, the permit application will include that?
The
Approval.
actual decision that's been filed with the town clerk does include that language.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Shelley Amster, 44 Prairie Street.
Yes, Ms. Amster.
I would like to understand the quality of the pavement that they used for doing the Thoreau School neighborhood and that whole area. It seemed, from when I questioned it, that they went in for a lower quality to save money, but it looked like it actually was worse quality than it was before it got covered. So I was hoping to hear that there's better judgment in the selection of the pavement surface when they go forward. Is that being investigated? Was people satisfied with the quality?
All right, so we'll take that as a prospective question, because if you want to ask about work that's already done, that's really not within the scope of this article. Okay, Ms. LaFleur, can you tell us whether future paving is going to look just like the paving in the Thoreau District neighborhood, or is it going to look different?
Yeah, so I will start this, and I'm hoping somebody from the engineering department is going to pop up. What I can tell you is, because of the cost of road maintenance, we have been trying a number of different applications. So you may have seen a different application that we're trying to use to prolong the life of roads. And I think we've had some that have been more successful than others, but it's definitely different than what we have done in the past. If you're satisfied with that, maybe I'll stop, because I don't see anybody in the back corner. Oh, Steve, okay. Steve Dukerin, our town engineer. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question and concerns. I believe you're speaking of, like the town manager mentioned, the preservation technique. It's a thin overlay, and it's meant to give a few more years, and it's usually applied to streets that haven't gone beyond the point of repairs. And so it brings the, like mentioned before, the pavement condition index back up, and now you can, you almost have a good road for another, period of time. So it doesn't cost as much as the major repairs. And it's always, it's been used by many towns, as part of the formula for getting your network at a higher level of better condition.
So you feel that it's a quality that you're going to go forward with?
We will keep considering it. We used that technique 2 years ago as a pilot program, and not just to see how it's performing, but also for us to learn how to do it better. And so, yes, we will keep looking at different techniques. As I mentioned, it's part of the program that many towns use, and we want to have the same kind of success. I could mention Bedford uses it, Lexington, Arlington, they all use those techniques.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. We'll go now to the auditorium.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Alec Wyeth, 42 Orchard Road. This is more of a question, not a con.
Yes, we don't have a question microphone designated here, so
All right, I didn't see
either
that,
one is
sorry.
fine.
Question is, can someone tell me when the section of Main Street from Route 2 to West Concord Junction will be repaired? That road is in horrible condition. It's been in horrible condition for a long, long time, and is a real risk to all bike riders.
Ms. LaFleur, are you able to tell us if that's in the budget, in the capital budget? And I think that's just for the coming year or not? Okay. Here comes the town engineer. He will enlighten us.
Town Engineer Steve Dukran again. This year, we have a number of sections of Main Street that will be paved, beginning at Monument Square, all the way to Sudbury Road. And then for the section you mentioned, from Route 2, in fact, all the way to the town line, we have a couple of different sections that are in worse condition that will be repaved. I couldn't give you the exact limits, but we have that scheduled for this year.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And we'll go to the center microphone here in the gymnasium.
Hi, hi, Steve Urza, 39 Cottage Street. I'm here regarding the upgrade to Baker, Maine, and also Cottage is the same intersection, and I'm just wanted to say the town should consider also with the NOVA money to consider sidewalks on Cottage, because it's really not safe, and it's just the traffic is just going to increase more with this development. So sidewalks should be considered on Cottage Street.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the auditorium?
I do not see anyone.
Looks like we're ready to proceed to a vote. All those in favor of Article 9, the town fiscal 25 capital improvement and debt plan, thank you very much. All those opposed? That is near unanimous in the gymnasium. How about the auditorium?
All but unanimous in the auditorium.
All right, we'll declare that one as near unanimous, and I do so declare. We have addressed Articles 10, 11, and 12 on the consent calendar, and we will next proceed to Article 13, which is funding for public safety during the Concord 250th celebrations in 2025. And the motion here is that Mr. Clayton moves that the town take affirmative action on Article 13 as printed in the warrant. Could we have a second for the motion? I see that we have one. Thank you very much. Mr. Clayton.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Again, my name is Gary Clayton, 31 Black Birch Lane. I am currently chairperson of the Concord 250 Executive Committee. Pleased to be here this evening to present this article, which we recommend affirmative action under. The year 2025 will mark the 250th anniversary of the historic battles of Concord and Lexington and the beginning of the American Revolution. Over 2 years ago, the Select Board established the Executive Committee to identify and evaluate opportunities and needs as to how the town should organize this event. And while the committee's focus is primarily on celebrations within Concord, we are very mindful that the 250th anniversary is an event that is also of regional and national significance. And it will generate much public and media interest, and Concord needs to be prepared to welcome more than 100,000 visitors. Preparing for what we expect can be a wonderful and exciting series of events and programs is a complex endeavor. And for example, we are coordinating our efforts with other Battle Road communities as well as numerous state and federal agencies. The scale of these events is challenging, as is the mix of religious and secular holidays on and around April 19th, 2025. This includes Passover, Good Friday, Easter, and Marathon Monday. And there is a national election this November and a presidential inauguration in January 2025. Given these realities, we must be sure that we are prepared for both an enjoyable and safe experience for Concord residents and our guests. And Article 13 is a critical action in helping us do so. I'm now going to ask Fred Ryan, who's currently our chair of our Public Safety Committee on the Concord 250 Executive Committee, to provide us with a bit more information regarding the basis for this request. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Mr. Clayton. Madam Moderator. Frederick Ryan, 211 Park Lane. Next slide, please. I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Concord 250 Public Safety Committee, and I am working alongside of all of your public safety professionals here in Concord. And it's important to point out that when we define public safety, we not only mean police and fire, which are obviously critical elements, we also include public works, public health, and really all of the municipal side resources and assets will be activated on during the week of the celebrations. The planning has already begun, and in order to properly plan, we have to make certain assumptions. We're assuming large crowds. In 1975, the town attempted to hold the crowds to around 120,000. We realized more than that, including about 12,000 protesters in 1975. And so we're using, our experiences and the history of what occurred back then and making some assumptions. Next slide, please. We're working closely with our federal partners and state partners as well. The budget itself is right there, pretty self-explanatory. The vast majority of the funds are for public safety. We're seeking $350,000 tonight from free cash. Next slide, please. This sums up the budget, self-explanatory for each of the major departments, and a line item as well for mutual aid. That mutual aid will cover police, fire, public works assets coming in from other jurisdictions into Concord to help support our public safety professionals. Next slide, please. There has been some discussion in the community about the potential for federal resources. I want to be abundantly clear that if our events and or the marathon 2 days later are individual events declared to be SEER rated or a combination of the events, one SEER rating, and that's a designation by the Department of Homeland Security, it would bring federal resources in terms of intelligence resources and specialized assets. It will not bring dollars. The responsibility for managing public safety in the community will be on the town of Concord. Next slide, please. The planning has begun. We're working closely with MEMA, the Department of Homeland Security, and next slide, please. We're working multi-jurisdictionally, and you can see here, these are all the public safety planning work groups. Really just lay that out so that you can see the scope and complexity of the planning. We ask your support of the warrant article. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will note that both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on Article 13. And I see that we have someone at the question microphone. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
My name is David Schoenbrunn, 1679 Lowell Road.
Mr. Schoenbrunn.
We had a hearing earlier this year around mobile communications and some of the gaps in those mobile communication zones in Concord and the impact, the negative impact on emergency services at the schools and also in the center of town. With this many people coming to town, it will exacerbate that situation, and emergency services members will not be able to communicate via mobile phones. What is the town's plan to mitigate those issues temporarily or long-term?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Can we go bring the slide back up with the working groups? There is a working group on communications. I think it was the second to last slide. And your police chief and fire chief are actively engaged. It's the one with all the work groups right there. And there's a public safety communications work group. And we will activate services known as FirstNet. FirstNet was developed post 9/11 for the very reasons that the gentleman pointed out. And so mobile repeaters and assets to provide public safety professionals with their exclusive band will be deployed during the events of the celebrations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone in the auditorium?
No, we do not. We have a lot of people, but nobody standing in front of a microphone.
Well, thank you for that clarification. Okay. I don't see anyone else at a microphone in the gymnasium. I think we are ready to proceed to a vote on Article 13. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you very much. All those opposed? That is unanimous here. Well, nope, almost unanimous. It is almost unanimous in the gymnasium. How about the auditorium?
And really unanimous in the auditorium.
Okay. All right, so the meeting has voted in favor of Article 13 by a near unanimous vote, and I do so declare. Thank you very much. I have no motion under Article 14, and I will therefore declare that the meeting is taking no action on Article 14. We have addressed Article 15 on the consent calendar, and we will now move to Article 16. Article 16 asks for the town to take affirmative action on the article by accepting the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half, to authorize the establishment of a Stormwater Enterprise Fund effective July 1, 2025, and also to adopt a bylaw regarding the Stormwater Enterprise Fund as printed in Appendix 3 to the Finance Committee report, which happens to be on page 29. Can we have a second for the motion, please? I see that we have one. Mr. Weber.
Yes, Sven Weber, 50 Belknap Street, talking on behalf of Public Works Commission. So Article 16 is a first step of a two-step process. Today we are only talking about establishing a legal framework to allow Public Works to plan for a stormwater utility here in Concord. The next 12 months, via public process and public hearings, we will establish a budget and fee structures, and we will come back with these numbers in the budget next year at a town meeting for your approval. So today we are only talking about a legal framework to enable Public Works to establish, to start working on this. Next slide. So what's the issue? We have a stormwater utility system here which is separate from the sewer system. So it's a standalone system that deals with the stormwater, the rainfall that is coming. This system is old, it is underfunded, and it's failing. And if it fails, and when it fails, it can fail big and expensive. And we have a significant backlog in investments, and we know rainfall is increasing year over year, not over time, but also the rainfalls itself. There's much more rain coming in a much shorter time period. So Our existing system is not only old and failing, but also getting overloaded with very heavy storms, and these storms are coming more and more. Next slides. So how much infrastructure are we talking about? You will be surprised. We have 170 culverts, 9 bridges, nearly 3,800 catch basins, 1,600 manholes, 19 miles of pipes and more. As said, it is chronically underfunded in operations, maintenance, and capital investments. Consequently, we have underfunded federal mandates which fall under the MS4 regulations. We have compromised environmental protection of the stormwater going into the nature. We are reacting passively in emergency. That has 2 negatives. A, it is sometimes 10 times more expensive to react on an emergency than to have regular maintenance and the repair ahead of time. The other consequence is to finance emergency spendings, we have to divert budgets from public works from other areas like the roads, which was discussed, to address the emergency on our stormwater system. Next slide. Although we are not deciding on budget, we feel that you should get a little sneak preview of how much are we talking about. An initial investment asks for about $1.5 to $2 million per year. We know we have about 53 million square feet of impervious cover, so this is the asphalt and concrete on the property. That does not include the roads. 52% of it is on residential property, 48% is on non-residential property. The fee structure we imagine, and which is defined, or the fee assessment is defined in the bylaw, is that we assess all properties in Concord. That's important. You heard earlier that if we would do this via property tax, the financial burden would fall of over 90% to the residential property owners. By establishing this fund, we would assess all property owners according to the impervious area they have. So that includes the residentials, the commercials, the school, the town, the state. Every property owner has to pay in. We also imagine as the Public Works Commission that the fee schedule should have incentives if you have less concrete and asphalt, and you're getting penalized if you have more, so that we have some kind of incentive structure built in. But again, these numbers will be discussed in public hearings and in a public format with the Public Works Commission and presented next year. Next slide. Here more the technical things of the bylaw itself. Section 1 talks about the purpose of the fund, that we address the MS4 permit compliance, that we deal with flood mitigation, that we address failing infrastructure, deferred maintenance, and work on stormwater quality. Next slide. Section 2 and 3 are simple definition and responsibilities. Section 4 is talking about establishing the fund and the budget, and we have to come back to you every year with our budget so you can work on that. Section 5 is rate setting, which is a public process with public hearing by the Public Works Commission. Section 6, billing, collection, and credits, and most importantly, Section 7, an appeals process in case you do not agree with the fee assessed. With that, I would also like to highlight that the town has significant information on its webpage, also here in front in the room here. And in the interest of getting our stormwater infrastructure back in shape, and also in the interest of getting it prepared for climate change resilience, I would ask you to take affirmative action on Article 16. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weber. I will note that both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on Article 16, and I believe we will hear from Ms. Ackerman on behalf of the Select Board.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. The Select Board voted unanimously to recommend affirmative action on Article 16. We are going to have to pay for stormwater one way or the other. In fact, we're already paying some of it via taxpayer general funds, and then some of that money that's budgeted for road maintenance gets diverted into stormwater maintenance. Then we have emergencies, as you just heard, that can cost a lot more, things like flooding and culvert breaks. And then we have to divert additional taxpayer revenue. It makes much more sense if we can plan and budget for stormwater management. Then the amount that we budget for road work will go to road work. The amount we budget for stormwater will go to stormwater. And in the long run, we will pay less that way. So setting up an enterprise fund means that we can also allocate costs in a fairer way. For example, by charging the most to the users with the most impervious surface. Article 16 only sets up the legal authority to create an enterprise fund for stormwater. If the article passes, the Public Works Commission will study and adopt the details of the fee structure. They will set rates and then bring a stormwater enterprise budget to future town meetings for approval. We ask for your support on this Article 16.
Thank you very much. We'll open the floor now for questions and comments. I see we have someone at the pro microphone. Microphone, go ahead.
Ham Rockwell, 1810 Main Street.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. I'm a board member at ORS, the local watershed organization that advocates for the protection of the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord rivers, and I'm speaking for the organization and for myself in support of Article 16. Stormwater is now one of the main sources of pollution of our ponds, streams, and rivers. Fertilizer runoff from lawns and fields causes smelly overgrowth that overwhelms the local ecosystem of rivers and streams. Road salt damages aquatic habitat, and in the summer, hot water running off the pavement makes it hard for fish to thrive. Stormwater can infiltrate wastewater collection systems, adding significant cost and wasting energy, and global warming increases the intensity of the rain events, overwhelming our older storm drains and flooding roads and property. Crucially, stormwater is also the source of our drinking water, but only if it's allowed to soak into the ground. Good stormwater infrastructure can solve these problems. Rainfall's best managed when you let the rain absorb into the ground where it falls and recharge the aquifer. But impervious surfaces like roads, parking lots, cement patios, and roofs interfere with that natural solution. Stormwater doesn't respect town boundaries, and so that's why the federal government is regulating it with the Clean Water Act, but there isn't much federal funding to actually manage stormwater. So your local tax dollars are footing the bill. So you're competing with schools and police and libraries and other town services for stormwater management. And that means that the maintenance is getting deferred and emergency repairs end up costing more than the maintenance would have in the first place. ORS has been working with municipalities to support stormwater solutions that include green infrastructure that filters stormwater and recharges the drinking water aquifers. And several communities in our watershed have adopted rules requiring new development to manage their stormwater on site with rain gardens or drainage swales that allow the stormwater to recharge the local aquifer. Concord has implemented such a policy, but it's only for new development. So it does not help the aging stormwater infrastructure that's already in place. That means there's no financial incentive to manage stormwater effectively on existing properties. And speaking for myself, I have a lot of confidence that the citizens of Concord can come up with an equitable fee system for this. I urge you to vote affirmatively on Article 16.
Thank you. Catch your breath. Center microphone with a question.
Sure. Rob Alkind, 82 Shadyside. Just a quick question on the fee structure. Would there be any consideration for private residents that have their own septic and well system to maybe be exempt or maybe get some credits for that since they're already spending money on the infrastructure? Thanks.
Mr. Weber?
So if you have your own stormwater infrastructure, that definitely has credits, that's imagined. But if it's your septic system, which is your wastewater, that's a separate system. So you have to be careful not to mix the wastewater with the stormwater.
Thank you. You cannot do this talk from your seat, sorry. If you have a follow-up question, you can come back to the microphone. Okay. We have someone at the con microphone here.
Hi, Don Kupka, 39 Devon Street.
Mr. Kupka.
I'm speaking for myself, although I'm on FinCom. I'm not against stormwater management. Believe me, I'm in totally favor of it. I'm just questioning the creation of a new bureaucracy to oversee it. I think that today it competes for dollars with road maintenance, et cetera, because that's how our system works. When we start breaking things off and then creating separate fees for them, it's really a tax increase without the ability to vote on the overall budget or consider it relative to other expenditures in the town. And so if we spend another $2 million, that's about a 2% increase in our taxes. Even though it's not a tax, it's a fee. So the other side of that, of course, is those fees are not tax deductible to the taxpayer. Further, if we create another system, we have to account for the hours of the workers separately. We're just adding cost to accomplish the same goal at the end of the day. Lastly, I think that it's something we need to do, and I'm really glad to hear Sven Weber present it tonight. Something we need to do, and we've heard from the citizens, we need to do the roads. I think there is a lot that we need to do that falls under Public Works. I hope that we don't splinter them off into enterprise funds to get them done. I hope instead we can come together and create a master plan to get them done and fund them through tax increases appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now go to the auditorium.
Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Todd Taylor, 95 Blueberry Lane. This is not pro, this is actually just a general question. I'm in support of the article in general, but on the slides there was a picture of the flooded Old North Bridge, and so our parade was diverted this year. I was marching with the Cub Scouts and we didn't get to go over the bridge, which is a little bit of a bummer. So I just had a question, are we having a plan for that specific stormwater problem next year in that area since it's significant? I was just curious if that's already in the works. People have a plan for that.
Just to clarify,
question.
that picture was in there mainly to visualize that there is more rainfall in general and that we have heavier storms.
Right.
I had to squeeze everything into 6 minutes here.
Thank you. We'll come back to the gymnasium. We have someone at the pro microphone here.
Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green.
Ms. Dritt.
I just want to remind us that there's a difference between just spending and investment. And it seems to me that this investment is the kind of thing that really pays off by lowering the entire cost of living here. So let's do it this way rather than the expensive way. And I think that our volunteer citizens could hardly be categorized as a bureaucracy. Instead, we are blessed with volunteer excellence that really benefits us all. Thank you to all the people that are on the committees, including the one that's going to be this one.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the auditorium?
Not at a microphone.
All right. So, we've been going for a while here. We're ready for a vote. How about we all stand up to take this vote? Okay, we'll stretch, everybody. All those in favor of Article 16, please raise your voting slip. Thank you very much. All those opposed, please raise your voting slip. Okay, that's a substantial majority by which it passes in the gymnasium. How about the auditorium?
I would say so in here too. I didn't have time to count, but there were several no's, but.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Article 16 passes by a substantial majority, and I do so declare. We'll now move on to Article 18. Thank you, 17, yes. And there is a handout that pertains to Article 17, and it looks like the motion is up there also. But there is also a handout. This is an appropriation of $50 million for water supply, water treatment, associated with Nagog Pond and also PFAS mitigation at impacted water supplies. So can we have a second for the motion, please? I see that we have one. I will note that this is a borrowing article, so that it does require a 2/3 vote. Both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on this. And we will hear from Mr. Weber.
Yes, Sven Weber, 50 Belknap, again speaking on behalf of Public Works Commission. So we're talking water again, asking for authorization of $50 million. Can we go to the first slide? So why are we here? We, I think, can all agree that water must be safe to drink and that supply must meet demand. The $50 million debt authorization is here to enable Public Works to do the work on Nagog Pond. That's a project that is 20 years in the making. We need a water filtration system and facility there. We spent some time there. We already spent several $1 million on this project. It's time to bring this over the finish line. In addition, about a few weeks ago, the EPA issued new standards on PFAS in drinking water. PFAS are forever chemicals. We can only have 4 parts per trillion of PFAS in our drinking water. We know as of today, we have to treat Nagog Pond and 2 of our wells to get under the threshold. We are slightly above that, not much, but we have to do that, and we have about 3 to 5 years to do that. And 3 to 5 years in infrastructure building is no time. Next slide. This $50 million will have no impact on property tax. It is financed by your water rates. So it will have impact on your water rates, and I will come back to that on my last slide. So just to be clear, this is financed through the enterprise system. The borrowing request today is needed for 2 reasons. One is we want to be eligible for state and federal funding. This is low interest funding. If you don't have authorization from the town meeting today, we will have to go to the market and pay higher market price interest rates, which we believe is not in the interest of our Concordians here. The second is the EPA regulation I just mentioned. We have 3 to 5 years to comply and get PFAS levels below 4 parts per trillion at the 3 sources I mentioned before. So we have to get this facility in place now. We will not draw immediately against that facility. We have reserves, and we have another leftover facility, which I'll talk about shortly. Next slide. We were asking public hearings, what are the alternatives? Alternative number 1 is do nothing. We will have public health risk. We will be unable to meet season demands, and we will face fines sooner or later. We could temporarily ship bottled water, but you can imagine it is very expensive, highly complex, and doesn't help us much. There can be the idea of home treatment, means is smaller treatment filter systems at your home or in the office building. We made a calculation. This is similar, if not higher, capital cost, significantly higher operational cost, very complex quality control challenges, as we have to have access to the respective basements and entry points to regularly replace these filters. There's another option, connecting Concord to the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority network. We are very much in favor of that. There was a study in summer last year that this is theoretically possible. There's a little downside here. The study is estimating it takes about 25 to 45 years the moment they start working on this, and they haven't started working on this. So that doesn't help us in the next 3 to 5 years. We continue to working on that solution because we believe long-term it's a very interesting option for us. Some of you might remember that in 2016 there was a $16.5 million authorization for debt for the Nagog Pond. We went through $3 million of that. We will finish with that with the phase 1 and phase 2, and we will be able to start here and on the filtration plant with $9 million remaining then. And we will use the $50 million hopefully approved here today to finish the filtration plant, to do the PFAS treatment on the 2 wells, and add some small work on the Route 2A water main. Next slide. Here's a 10-year view. You see the green part is how we spent the money. So most of it will be spent in fiscal year 26, 27, and 28. The blue line is our reserve. We were able to put about $13 million of capital to the side, which will be drawn first before we draw against the debt. The long-term debt service cost has a 25% impact on the budget. So you should expect over long term and step by step that your water fees will go up respectively. And it is what it is. But in the interest of getting Nagog Pond finally done, and in the interest of getting compliant with EPA PFAS regulations, I would urge you to take affirmative action on Article 17. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Forgive me if I already mentioned, but both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on Article 17. And I believe we will hear again from Ms. Ackerman on behalf of the Select Board.
Thank you. The Select Board voted unanimously to recommend affirmative action on this article. Safe, reliable drinking water is essential for life. We all know that, so obviously it has to be one of our top priorities. And then less than 3 weeks ago, the EPA announced a new standard for the forever chemicals known as PFAS. Luckily for Concord, this was not a surprise to our CPW Director, Cathcart, and his team, and they had already been planning for it, and they put this warrant article in, and we're ready tonight to discuss and vote on the warrant article. Yes, it's costly to treat PFAS and to bring Nagog Pond online. The borrowing request is for $50 million, but we will only borrow and spend what we actually need. The debt will be gradually repaid by ratepayers via the Water Enterprise Fund. Please support this article and vote affirmatively.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ackerman. I see that we have some questions. Let's go to the question microphone here in the gymnasium.
Laura Levan, 58 Nimrod Drive.
Yes, please proceed.
I wonder if there will be credit for filtering in your point of service in the fee schedule.
Thank you. Mr. Weber?
You probably mean at point of use at your house. Yeah, we have to filter and have to get the standard, and the moment we put the water through the pipe to your house, we cannot manage the water quality after it enters your house, and we don't know how often you change your filter, what is the bacteria fill up, and so on. So that's one of the challenges for dealing with point of use solutions.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Hi, Joe Lauren, 134 Southfield.
Mr. Lauren?
2 questions. The first is, certainly this is not just a Concord problem, this is a national issue. So I'm wondering what other communities are doing. Not every community can afford a $50 million bond. So what are other communities doing? And as part of that, is there any state or federal help with this kind of a spend? And my second question is, you mentioned that the water rates will increase, and do you have an estimate about how much those will increase?
Thank you. Mr. Weber?
So how much state and federal will support this, and by the way, you lost your ballot, yeah, is unclear. We know there's a settlement, a PFAS settlement. It is at the moment very hard to estimate how much we would get out of it. It's about $500,000 to $2 million that would be paid over 10 years for the settlement. So there's still a lot of question marks. So therefore, we rather set a financing in place where we know we can execute, and if we need less and we get money somewhere else, cheaper or for free, of course, we take that. On the fees, yes, as I said, the budget impact is 25% for the debt service. So that means over time you have to increase your fees accordingly. We have full transparency. We have other factors that influence the fee, mainly MCI. MCI is the biggest customer. If MCI out and we don't have that revenue, that alone that might increase the fees even without that. And the last point you had, $50 million is a lot of money, but 35 is just for the NAGOG treatment facility without PFAS. So the majority of the money is for the surface water treatment for NAGOG.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Kathy Cucolo, 243 Katarina Heights.
Ms. Cucolo.
Yes. As the prior questioner asked, first of all, this is a very important project, and I am in support of it. But we are not the only town drawing water from Nagon Pond. So does this affect Acton and any of the other surrounding towns? And as the prior questioner, what are they doing? And is this then turning into a $150 or $200 million solution?
Thank you. I see Mr. Cathcart approaching the microphone.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Alan Cathcart, Director, Concord Public Works. As far as the impact on NAGOG, Concord is the only water supply system drawing from NAGOG as we speak. Littleton has been interested in withdrawing some through groundwater in the same watershed. There's been technical discussions and debates about that. As far as the town of Littleton and Acton, both are a little bit further ahead with their identification, only because they had issues before the standard was lowered to 4 parts per trillion. So it's interesting, they have received some, I know Littleton State Revolving Fund support early on, and they got some principal forgiveness for that. The challenge with the loans and what we can get through the federal state government is it is difficult for communities like Concord to be eligible for that. We do not qualify given some of the new criteria, but we have been eligible for low interest loans previously, and we'll be pursuing that as well. But the reality is this is an international problem. You will hear more and more communities going through discovery and identifying the need that they're going to have to do something. It's very important how it's going to affect your rate. We've had conversations about the borrowing, but we look at a typical household spends about $750 a year on its drinking water. We anticipate over the next 10 years that will likely double, so that you can kind of look at maybe a $1,500 bill for drinking water over 10 years. All things considered, it's not a bad deal. The problem is people just don't realize water costs money. But it's not just in Concord, it'll be everywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Cathcart. There's an extra chair there. Maybe you should stay close. Next question, please.
Peggy Wardelin, 97 Hillside Ave.
Yes, please proceed.
I know that there is a whole class of chemicals called that fall under PFAS, and so I assume that they're banning the entire class and that will filter for the entire class of chemicals. It's not like they're going to come up with one that's slightly different that isn't covered by the regulation, and then later on we'll have to upgrade our filtration system to do something extra. And then also my understanding is it's really hard to remove these. Are we going to get the benefit of removing extra other stuff, or is this specific only to that class of chemicals?
Thank you, Mr. Cathcart.
Yes, you're correct. There's thousands, tens of thousands of PFAS compounds. The challenge is the regulations are only targeting a few. There's discussion out there as far as how many really need to be regulated. So we are going to be learning with the rest of the world as far as, we can't say it's a silver bullet. With the treatment processes we're going to use are granular activated carbon, that's common, or reverse osmosis. And basically, carbon's a very good remover of a lot of different contaminants. And so if it can remove some of the PFAS that are being regulated, it'll likely remove others. But it's evolving. You know, the whole sort of science of detecting and identifying is evolving. Even the methods for treatment are evolving because it's just so expensive and it's so widespread. We're hoping that innovation and companies may come up with some alternatives.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Dinos Gonatas, Old Marlborough Road. First of all, Alan, I really appreciate your being here to present. It's great to hear from the career professionals that have spent their working lives on this. And also, thanks for having the chance to answer questions earlier. And I think at that time you said the main motivation for this plant wasn't so much PFAS, but the fact is that we're now at a level where we have rising levels of fecal and total coliform bacteria in some of the wells we draw from over the summer. And we're in a somewhat critical supply-demand condition and can have shortages. So I was wondering if you could explain that a little bit more. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I would ask if we could put up on the slide, there is a chart table, I think it's slide number 10. If we could put that up. But basically, the comment relates to, one is quality, but the other issue with NAGOG, why we've been dealing with NAGOG for 20 years is because we have a demand that can really be stretched. When you look at this table or chart, the green bar is what our average daily demand is, and that's an average over the course of a year, and we're looking at somewhere about 2 million gallons a day. The blue bar is what the demand would be in the winter, and that's somewhere around 1.6. In the summer, we have an average of about 2.4 million, and then during peak demands, we're close to 4 million. That's the red bar. The long and short is each of the lines across, you'll see the first line is the red line. That's our regulated limit. It's based on an annual average. The green line is what it would look like as far as a capacity to serve, and that's somewhere around 3.1 million gallons, assuming one of our supplies is out of service. And what's important to understand is we operate our wells 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And during the summer, a small upset can become a major issue and concern. And so that's where you'll hear us talk about controlling your demand. We target our message to outdoor water use, what we consider non-essential. But the full gambit of all of our supplies, including NAGOG, allow us to provide a little bit of freeboard in the event, and we should anticipate mechanical, electrical problems at various stations. You know, they just aren't designed to be 24/7 the way we operate them. So the question was, it's a capacity issue to get NAGOG online, and the issue with bacteria, it's not so much in the groundwater, but we don't use NAGOG year-round right now because we have a filtration waiver. You've heard about that if you've been listening for 20 years. We have yet to put the filtration plant in. There's been all sorts of challenges to do this. The good news is we didn't design and construct a facility in Acton that wouldn't meet drinking water regulations a year or two after it was completed. So we didn't do that, but we are looking at a significant price tag to complete it.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the auditorium. I see that we have a speaker at the microphone.
Go ahead, sir.
Scott Richardson, 260 Elsinore Street. Just a couple of comments. I'm at the pro microphone. I'm really into public water, and I'll be voting in support of this article. But I do want to just comment on two things. In the presentation, you said supply must equal demand. Well, that's true at some level, but we can always work on reducing our demand. And you just pointed to that, Alan, in your most recent slide there, where you talked about the summer consumption. We're all in this together, and I really encourage my neighbors to stop watering their lawns when it's raining. And I also encourage my neighbors to really think about not watering their lawns, period. I wonder what our use would look like if we really eliminated non-essential use of water. I wonder how much money we could save. I wonder what kind of resources could be available for other things. And, you know, I think the design of grass is that it's supposed to be brown in July and August. Mine is pretty much brown most of the year. Sorry about that to my neighbors, but I just don't spend time watering my lawn. I just don't see how that's a good use of our precious resources. So we are all in this together. I hope we can work on the demand side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in the auditorium? Now, folks,
right away.
let us keep our demonstrations to ourselves. You can smile inwardly. Anyone else in the auditorium?
No, not at the present
Okay,
time.
thank you. Microphone in the center here.
Lance Ramshaw, 106 Alden Road.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. When I looked at the displayed motion on the screen, it was slightly different than the printed motion on the flyer.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. What do you see as the difference?
Sorry, it's a long, right. There were differences in phrasing. I don't think they're significant, or at least I don't know what they are, but I just wanted people to be clear which one we're voting on.
Want to put the motion slide back up for us? Maybe we can have town council have a look at this for us and tell us whether this matters.
I see. The words or any other sum is deleted. That should not be there.
Okay, so I'll tell you what, we're going to be dealing with the motion as printed in the handout, okay? It'll be the motion as printed in the handout, which has those phrases that were in the article, and they're there to allow us a little wiggle room when we get to the motion, and we take them out when we get to the motion. So that slide should have been moved as printed in the handout, and that is in fact the motion. Okay, pro microphone here.
Janet Rothrock, Nersnack Hill Road, speaking for Concord Climate Action Network.
Ms. Rothrock.
Concord CAN urges an affirmative vote on Article 17. All Concordians deserve clean drinking water. PFAS is a neurotoxin, an endocrine disruptor, carcinogen, and obviously we should remove it from our drinking water. In addition, we strongly suggest that residents do everything possible to avoid the many sources of PFAS under our control in our daily lives, including some brands of dental floss, sunscreen and makeup, Teflon cookware, Gore-Tex outerwear, water and stain repellents such as Scotchgard and artificial turf.
Thank you very much. Next speaker at the pro microphone.
Rob Elkine, 82 Shadyside. Just to follow up on that, it's more of a request. I'd love to see if you guys could release some sort of guide for citizens on things we could do, like what to avoid, how best to use, or avoid using products, that kind of thing, just to help us out to deal with the problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I see we have one more question at the question microphone. Proceed.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. David Schoenbrunn, 1679 Lowell.
Mr. Schoenberg.
Mr. Weber, there was just a question about grass, green grass, brown grass. And it reminds me that a lot of new construction that occurs in Concord starts with basically a clear cut of a property zone that then they build a house and they'll grass. Has there been any discussion within the Department of Public Works as it relates to water resources to think about regulating clear cutting of properties so that we can maintain a canopy and have to use less water on grasses that are planted?
Mr. Schoenberg, that's a very interesting question, but it is outside the scope of the article. Thank you very much. Is there anyone, I do see someone at a microphone in the auditorium.
Yes, I do. Please go ahead.
Ellie Garvey, 25 Damon Street, and I'd like to call the question, please.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you don't mind, we're just going to go to a vote because there's nobody else who wants to talk. So I think we'll just do that. So all those in favor, and I'll remind you this is a 2/3 vote, all those in favor of Article 17, please raise your voting slips. Thank you very much. All those opposed? Well, that looks unanimous here in the gymnasium. How does it look in the auditorium?
I do not see a no vote in here.
All right, so that passes by a unanimous vote, and I do so declare. And We have addressed Article 18 on the consent calendar, and we'll now move to Article 19. And Article 19 is the Minuteman Regional Technical High School budget. And I think we will have the motion on the screen in a moment. But the motion is that Mr. Ledoux moves that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $1,732,806 for the town's assessed portion of the funds for the necessary and expedient purposes of the Minuteman Regional Technical High School District for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2025. Could we have a second for the motion, please? I see that we have one. I will note that both the Select Board and the Finance Committee recommend affirmative action on this article. And is Mr. Ledoux going to, nope. Would you like to do that? All right, come on up, Mr. All right, off you go. You can introduce our CFO here.
Good evening. I'm Steve Ledoux, Concord representative to the Minuteman Regional Vocational Technical School District. And I'd like to introduce Kevin Mahoney, who's our interim superintendent, and Nikki Andrade, who's our school business officer, who will be making the presentation. And I just want to let everybody know that we have hired a new superintendent to start July 1. Her name is Heidi Driscoll, and we're all very excited for her to get started. So I'll turn it over to Kevin.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mahoney.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to present our comments on our Minuteman School budget and assessment to Concord. If we could move to the next slide, please. Just an overall budget summary. Our FY25 operating budget's about $31.5 million, which is just under 4% from where it was this fiscal year. On the next slide, please, we'll show a breakdown of that. There we go. Where our operating budget recommendation of about $24.2 million is just under 3%. Our capital recommendation is up substantially, up to 1.6, primarily due to some funding, additional funding for our capital stabilization fund, $850,000 this year versus typically $500,000. And our debt recommendation is about 1.36% overall. That'll start to stabilize in future years, since all of our building project debt, or the majority of it, has been issued. When we look at the assessment summary, the assessments are only going up 0.82%. There's some factors there that are a bit of an anomaly. That's not what we should expect to see moving forward. When we look at the assessment to Concord, $1,732,805. That's 5.55% over this fiscal year, and that is the number in the article for which we're seeking your affirmative action. If we go on to the next slide, we'll just see the breakdown of the assessment based upon the regional agreement funding formula. Some of the major items there, the minimum required contribution is a factor of the state aid Chapter 70 formula, the $723,000. We just move our way down towards the bottom with a building project debt service of $426,000. That service is exempt based upon a debt exclusion vote of the town. If we look at the next slide, it just gives us our overall enrollment. As you can see, the blue line, the dark line, is the overall enrollment. The red line are students from in-district towns, and the green line is the non-member towns. As you can see, the trend since 2018, we had a total enrollment of about 516 students. It's now up to 685, which is pretty much at our capacity. We have about, of the 686 that we have now, 649 are in district, 37 are out of district. So you can see that change. This just gives you an overall enrollment from each member town. As you can see, in Concord, we have 41 students. As it stands right now, for next year, we would expect an additional 6 students, as we have 12 accepted incoming freshmen and 6 scheduled to graduate. So if we just move on to the next slide, by seeing that shift in enrollment as we saw in that graph, we start to see that out-of-district enrollment start to decrease, which is a benefit and opportunity because we're seeing more in-district students. However, those out-of-district students do pay tuition, and to the extent that that tuition is starting to go down, we'll start to see future assessments go up if that trend continues. So I think that the only other comment I'd like to mention about capital conditions at the school is the renovation of the east building. We currently have our animal science in a temporary location. We do have a building that's currently not occupied and falling into some level of disrepair that we'd like to invest about $7 million perhaps to move our animal science program in. We match that with our capital stabilization funds plus possible existing state grant funding to begin that project that may be over a phased period. In the short run, we would not anticipate that being an increase of our overall enrollment capacity in the building. That's still going to be somewhere around that 670 number is our sweet spot for that. But wanted to point that out because the increase in the capital stabilization funding that we're looking for is directly related to this project. So on the, so again, one of the things we also like to point out is our per pupil cost analysis. We are on the high side. We're the highest vocational school in the state, driven primarily by 3 reasons. Teacher salaries are on the high side. We have a 40% enrollment of students requiring special education services. And just geographically, with the campus being on the eastern side of our district, transportation costs are high. So again, this is just a summary showing preliminary assessments, and that concludes my comments. Thank you. And we would appreciate your consideration for affirmative action on your assessment.
Thank you very much. We'll open the floor for questions and comments. I do not see any in the gymnasium. Are there any in the auditorium?
There are no questions, but forgive me. This is Carrie Flood, and hello, Kevin Mahoney.
Looks like we're ready to proceed to a vote on Article 19. All those in favor, please raise your voting slips. Thank you very much. All those opposed? That is unanimous in the gymnasium. How's it look in the auditorium, Ms. Carrie Flood?
Unanimous here as well.
Great, thank you very much. Article 19 passes by unanimous vote, and I do so declare, and thank you very much. We'll next move on to Article 20, and we'll hear from Superintendent Hunter and also from School Committee Member Morano. And we'll see that we have the motion on the screen. The motion is to raise and appropriate $26,140,908 as the town's apportioned share of funds necessary for funds for the necessary and appropriate purposes of the Concord Carlisle Regional School District for the coming fiscal year, all to be expended under the auspices of the school committee. Could we have a second for the motion, please? I see that we have one. Dr. Hunter.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I always feel like it's a really important first statement that I must make to share our great appreciation for all that the community does for the schools, both the high school and of course all of K-8, pre-K-8 as well. And I think, you know, sometimes we get a really tangible way to share that back to you and show that that all matters. In many ways, the last few years, that's been harder to do because our needs have been so big and so changing. However, last week, U.S. World and News Report changed that and allowed me to stand here today and say this is the #1 school in the state for STEM education and number 13 in the country. So thank you for all you do to support us. Oh, you're breaking her no no
Yes,
clapping
you're,
rule.
you're breaking my rule, but that was
Thank
kind
you.
of hard.
So to just tell the story of the budget and how we got to where we are tonight and the budget that we're bringing to you, the regional budget, everything's in guideline. And so I think that's a really important piece to note. Salaries and non-salaries of many different topics. So our salary accounts are up this year at 2.46%, which I want to just name. That takes a lot of work to bring you salary increases at 2+%, because that does not, that means we negated contractual increases. We had to make changes. We had to do reductions. We looked at enrollment. We're down 7 FTEs, 3 teachers and 4 tutors because of enrollment. And we want to just note that. Non-salary includes a lot of different categories of cost, which we're going to show you as we go, many of which are not in guideline at the town level and are in guideline at the high school. And that is another thing that we have to negate as we go to try to bring a reasonable increase. I want to say that we were able to do that this year and bring you a 3.08% increase. If the guideline were based on the operational increase only at the high school, we would be below guideline. As I talk, you'll see why that morphs into a number that's slightly above and why we are not in agreement with the Finance Committee tonight. A high-level view of the salaries, you can see we've increased there at $222,000, which normally our guideline number does not accommodate for all of the salary increases, so we've been able to negate that. We had some other non-teacher salaries of tutors and 1 administrative position to put into the formula, and so you can see our overall increase there. The non-salary drivers, I just want to take a minute on this. Utilities, that's electricity. That's our just keeping the lights on. We've been needing to work with CMLP and adjust those numbers as the increase that all of you experienced a year ago were factored into the high school budget. You can see the rest of the list. Not many things we have control over. Special education, transportation, insurance. We're making that same change to Maya that was mentioned at the town, and other factors that are both negative in terms of debt service coming down because the building is paying off, but other increases that equate to overall increases. Our excess and deficiency account is how our equivalent to free cash. We've been running at almost the legal cap to that at just under 5%. However, we have runoff costs because of the change of insurance provider. We are going to, and the school committee's already approved this, we are going to take that $395,000 from E&D, reducing our E&D percentage to 3.8%. So we are beginning to use our reserves to accommodate for unexpected things that happen. OPEB, our other post-employment benefits, we've been trying to match the aggressiveness of the town in looking to be as fully funded as possible. Right now, we're on track to be fully funded in 2030, which is by far the most well-set position of any regional school district in the state. And we continue to contribute to this at over $400,000 a year. ESSER is our COVID funding that came from the government. All of the money is gone as of September of this year. We have expended all of that. We've incorporated 1 full-time position into this year's budget, and so these funds are no longer available to us. Overall, the assessments, which is always worth spending a few minutes on, that 3.08% operational increase translates differently to each community. Concord's assessment this year is 3.8%. Carlisle's is down 2.8% after 2 years in a row of significant increase last year to the tune of $600,000 just because of the number of children and seats in this building. And so I think that's worth noting, that it's really about how many kids are here and the regional formula that begins to impact the actual cost to Concord. It's not just the operational increase. We have watched the enrollment shift. We have seen decline in enrollment here at the high school, a much awaited decline, I would add. This building's been overcrowded, so we've accommodated for that. This year, because of the small shift between Concord and Carlisle, Concord has a $55,000 portion of that assessment. That is just because of the formula. There was nothing we could do about that, and yet it hasn't been factored into the guideline number. We do have some outstanding risks that are worth noting. As I said, we're already using some of our reserves. We are also using reserves in special education and using some of our circuit breaker funding, which is the subsidy from the state. We accommodate for all of the revenue projections from the state and the regional budget. The town does that on the CPS side. Right now, those are moving numbers, and we've seen varying numbers that include some deficits to what we had projected, so we will have to factor that in for whatever is passed here tonight. Any shortfalls, we need to go either to spending reductions and look at reallocating funds, which could be programs for kids or services to students, or we need to go further into our reserves of E&D, which is not recommended given that we're now under 4%. I think one last note of budget risk, unbudgeted special education costs. Many of you know this, an out-of-district placement, depending on the needs of the child, can be anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000 with no ability for us to predict what's coming, and we must accommodate for that. So we're here tonight asking that you'll support the budget despite its small difference between the Finance Committee guideline. We're spending responsibly, we're spending carefully while meeting the needs of children. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tracy, are you waiting for, did you? Yeah, okay. Could we put the Finance Committee's amendment up, please? So the Finance Committee is moving to amend the motion under the article to reduce the number from by $120,583. So from $26,149,008 to $26,020,325. Can we have a second for the motion to amend, please? I see that we have one. And Mr. Parashar, I've given Mr. Parashar 5.5 minutes to talk about his amendment. So Shannon, if you're able to put that in, that would be great.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Each year, the Finance Committee considers a variety of factors when working with town and school leadership and making recommendations for the following year's budget. As indicated earlier, we try to balance the needs of appropriately funding education, town services, affordable housing, and other areas, while recognizing the impact of higher spending on property taxes and the town's overall financial health. These considerations are at the top of our mind for all articles on which we make recommendations, including Article 20. This is in stark contrast to the school committee and the school leadership, who have consistently reminded us that they consider only the needs of the school system. For several years, we've used objective, relevant economic data to help provide guidelines to the town and schools. I emphasize help because we also consider budget requests presented by the schools and town, as well as their impact on property taxes. We did actually consider the shift in enrollment. We heard about it from the schools back when we were discussing their budgets through the budget cycle. This year, our recommended increase in guideline spending for town and school was 3.66%, which was the largest increase supported by the data. This guideline was approved despite the current tight financial situation where expenses are outpacing financial growth, as you saw earlier at the beginning of the meeting, and our financial reserves at the town are at their minimum levels. The Finance Committee recommended the largest increase supported by the data because we feel that this number is a reasonable increase while also limiting tax increases. You remember the 7.9% increase per year that we're facing. We're trying to keep that in mind. And we've already heard about the multi-million dollars in spending that's going to be occurring because of the articles that we proposed, that we passed a few minutes ago. The same guideline was met by both the town and CPS, as you'll hear from CPS in a few minutes. As shown here, the gap between the Finance Committee guideline and the school committee's proposed budget is $120,000, or 0.52% of the proposed assessment. The superintendent and the school committee have indicated that to meet our guidelines, they would not fill a retiring computer science teacher position and reduce 0.25 of a chorus teacher. Our guidelines did not address specific budget items such as number of FTEs. Those allocations are up to the town and the schools. However, I'll note that when asked to meet the Finance Committee guidelines, the only choices presented by the superintendent and the school committee are provocative student-facing reductions. Recall that this is the same approach that the school committee took last year when the CPS budget similarly exceeded our guidelines. Within a $39 million CCHS budget, of which our share is $26 million, we believe the gap can be narrowed without student-facing reductions. For example, administrative staff at the high school has increased from 10.8 FTEs to 16.2 from 2019 to 2024, an increase of 8.4% per year. Let me repeat that. Administrative staff increased by over 5 FTEs over 5 years. And overall staff increased at a higher rate than all other comparable school districts except Concord Public Schools and Sudbury Public Schools during that time. This is even though during the same time, student enrollment at CCHS has actually declined by 6% and is projected to continue declining. And in the meantime, the CCHS operating budget has continued to increase year over year. We also note, as the superintendent pointed out, that for the past 2 years, the high school ended up with a budget surplus of $400,000 for each year. In short, the gap is small and should be narrowed in ways other than suggested by the superintendent and school committee. Funding at the guideline does not mean that the school's budget is being cut. Indeed, the operating budget would increase by 3.26%. Finally, it's important to remind ourselves about the events surrounding the $2.3 million restroom building at the high school, which is Article 21. Superintendent and the school committee proposed to spend $2.3 million in the fall without considering any alternatives. Let me repeat. They wanted to spend $2.3 million without considering any alternatives. And the rationale that they put forward on why such an expensive building was necessary was because they might be cited for plumbing code violations. There's a risk for ADA lawsuits. Well, that was the way the original building was designed. And oh, by the way, all other schools in the league have permanent buildings. And when pressed by both the Concord and Carlisle finance committees and others, they appropriately withdrew the article. They did not consider if the town's financial situation is different than when the building was originally proposed 10 years ago. And there is no mitigation plan in place either to address those risks. Why are these events relevant to Article 20? The same process and leadership that made decisions leading to the proposed restroom building and the subsequent withdrawal are also asserting that there's no choice but to reduce teachers if Article 20 is passed. We should all wonder if there is no other choice. And finally, one other, if you'll forbear. We all love Concord, and we all want great schools, good town services, open spaces. The chair of the school committee has said that school budgets are, quote, wrongly being scapegoated for fiscal problems in town by the finance committee. We're not scapegoating school budgets. Questions are being asked about the school budgets because they account for 2/3 of total spending. If we seek to lower spending growth effectively and moderate our property taxes, it's only natural to look at the largest component of spending. Finally, those asking questions love Concord just as much as those that support the schools, regardless of how long we've lived here or otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Morano.
Thank you. Good evening. The Regional School Committee has brought to you tonight a fiscally responsible level service budget. The amendment brought forth by the Finance Committee represents a cut to our level service budget. According to the Finance Committee report on page 11, the first stated goal of the guideline process is to maintain level service for the town and the schools. By reducing our budget to the recommended guideline, it will necessitate cutting a full-time teacher and reducing one of our current programs. It should be noted that the regional 3.08% increase to the overall budget is one of the lowest in the state. We compare ourselves to 9 other districts when we talk about per pupil spending. As you can see, we have the lowest budget increase amongst our peer districts. You'll also notice that not one of these districts would have been able to meet our Finance Committee guideline. We've made cuts to the budget already, including reduction of 7 full-time teachers and tutors. It should be noted that we have an enrollment shift to Concord that accounts for $55,000, which is not taken into consideration during the Finance Committee guideline process. Our utilities alone increased 24.5%, representing $146,000, which represents the entirety of the difference. Dr. Hunter also presented cost drivers to our budget, which are largely mandated services and utilities. We've made many reductions already, and if this amendment passes, the 2 programs that we will be obligated to cut will be computer science teacher only because of retirement, that is correct, and will not fill that position, and a reduction of select chorus. This is a significant impact on students and teachers. Without computer science, our students will lose the ability to complete the engineering certificate. The engineering certificate helps our students differentiate themselves when applying to college and can help guide their career choices. Our music program is one of the top in the state, and this reduction will have impact to the choral music program. This week, as Dr. Hunter mentioned, the U.S. News & World Report rankings were released. I'm happy to report that CCHS is ranked #1 in the state for STEM and 13th in the country. Again, #1. We're ranked #12 for traditional public high schools. We're seeing incredible outcomes of our students thanks to our teachers, staff, and administrators. How can we possibly consider cutting programs that are bringing great success to our high school? Our duty as a school committee is to advocate for the needs of students. And I want to thank Dr. Hunter and Mr. Connery for bringing forth a responsible budget. There are cuts that have been made already. We have looked at every line item, and I ask you tonight to please vote no on the amendment proposed by the Finance Committee.
Thank you very much, Ms. Marano. We'll hear from Mr. Dane for the Select Board.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Henry Dane, Chair of the Select Board, and the Select Board has voted unanimously to support the amendment proposed by the Finance Committee. We have given serious attention to the data provided by the Superintendent regarding the failure of the Regional School District to bring its fiscal year 25 budget within the guidelines established by the Finance Committee. Since virtually every town department has needs that exceed the available resources, the Finance Committee, appointed by the moderator, serves a valuable service and disinterested arbiter to impose discipline on the competing demands for resources, and this is accepted by both the town, its departments, and the Concord Public Schools. The FinCom guidelines is based on data, not opinions. It is a compilation of expected growth in salaries and growth in income published by budget offices. As chair of the Select Board, I have been a strong defender of the function of the Finance Committee and have repeatedly emphasized the importance of the Select Board and the Finance Committee working together to support each other in the best interests of fiscal responsibility, efficient government, and controlling the burden of real estate taxes, the vast majority of which go to supporting our fine public schools. We have discussed the need for this cooperation among ourselves and with the Finance Committee, which has provided a comprehensive response to the arguments that have been put forward by the school committee. And we have made it known over the past couple of weeks, and again at our Select Board meeting on Monday, that we will support the Finance Committee amendment, which would allow us to recommend affirmative action on Article 20 at the guideline level. We suggest it is not credible that we suggest that it would have been better, it would have been a better solution for the school committee to take action on its own and have all 3 committees in agreement in support of its budget for the coming fiscal year. In the recent U.S. News & World Report's rankings of Massachusetts schools, CCHS was ranked number 20. And of the 7 comparator schools, Lexington, Dover, Sherburne, Acton, Boxborough, Wayland, Weston, Belmont, and Westford Academy. 5 of those schools who scored higher in the ratings spent less per pupil, one by as much as $7,500 per pupil, and Acton Boxborough ranking number 10 by $5,500 less. It is not credible that the high school cannot shave $12 per student, 6 cents per day off its budget without sacrificing essential or even desirable services. We recommend affirmative action on the motion to amend. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dane. I'm going to go to the question microphone here. Now, you don't have a question. You are on so you got in the wrong line, but Mr. Schoenberg requested an additional minute in advance of the meeting, and he's requested to speak from the podium because his notes are on his laptop. So here we go.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And first, I'd like to thank the Finance Committee. This is a difficult job, and the report they put together is comprehensive, and they should be applauded for their work. It's fairly difficult. In my daily life, I run a business that advises state and local governments on policy and complex projects. And it's common for towns like ours to have a finance committee that focuses on cost. It's their responsibility to make sure we don't spend too much and to ask questions, which is healthy. But at the same time, they also have a responsibility to foster economic growth through investment. When you look at our town, 93% of the money that comes available for our town to spend is from real estate taxes, and that's based on real estate value. And the biggest impact on real estate value, the number one for any town in Middlesex, is the quality of education. Because the principal buyer for towns like ours are 30 to 49, and they have children or they're planning to have children. This is publicly available data. As Dr. Hunter showed, we are dead last in year-over-year spending amongst our peer group. What do you think that does to a prospective home buyer when they consider Concord against its peers? The result is simple. It reduces demand. The impression on a home buyer is that Concord is spending less than their peers because we're being, quote unquote, more responsible. It's more cost effective, but it's less investment. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, as of March 2024, the inflation in the United States is 3.48%. How do we expect teachers to make enough money to live nearby to our schools if we're increasing the budget by 3% when inflation is 3.48%, and that's actually lower than it's been recently? The challenge that we face is that the Finance Committee focuses on both cost and investment, but they only think about investment in schools when it comes to the building. Just read the finance report. The word investment is only used 4 times as it relates to education, and every time it's about capital expense, the building, never about the people. The people are more impactful to our children and to the quality of education. I urge you to defeat the motion from the Finance Committee and approve Article 20 as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go to the con microphone here.
Thanks so much. My name's Adam Snodgrass, 2080 Main Street.
Mr. Snodgrass.
And I didn't mind waiting out that long minute because I share those sentiments so totally. I really appreciate the work that's been done by the Regional School Committee here. And by the way, I work in public school, not here in Concord. I rarely say such things. But I enjoy saying them here because I love the work that you're doing. I like that you have the courage to stand up and say, this is what we need, this is what's right to do for our students. I'm willing to share, Madam Moderator, I have so much respect for the Finance Committee and for the Select Board and for the Chair. So much respect, I do. And there's just not enough time to say it. And perhaps in my sharing, it doesn't always come through, okay? So, but I just want you to know, not just in this case, but in every case, if the school committee asks for it, I want to give it to them. And I want to give it to them because they're doing the work that we've asked them to do, which is to manage our schools. And by the way, if they didn't come and ask for it, I'd be here calling them out on it tonight and saying, why didn't you? Why didn't you stand up and ask for it? So I really appreciate what you're doing here, and I hope people join me in voting no. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question microphone.
Peggy Wortelen, 97 Hillside Ave.
Yes.
Thanks, Madam Moderator. I remembered. I have lived here since 1998 and have come regularly to town meeting, and I always appreciate the input of the Select Board and the Finance Committee on whether they believe that a certain article should be voted yes or no. I don't remember there ever being a motion to cut a budget presented by the Finance Committee and supported by the Select Board. Has that ever happened before? Yeah, okay, it has. Okay, it's happened before. That's good to know. I do not remember it ever happening, and I urge you to vote no.
Okay, well, that was a question microphone. Okay, so I would urge people who are in the question line to actually have a question. And if you're against the amendment, there's a microphone that says con, and that means you're against it. And over here, there's a pro microphone. That means you're in favor of it. So let's go to the pro microphone.
Lois Wassoff. I live at 258 Sudbury Road. I'm a member of the Finance Committee, but I'm speaking for myself.
Ms. Wassoff.
I just want to clarify a couple of points. First of all, the schools were given a guideline of 3.66%, which exceeds some of the inflation figures that we've been discussing. Secondly, on the point about diversity in town and encouraging young families to move here, I'd remind you of Parashar Patel's presentation and of some of the materials in our Finance Committee report. 7.9% per year projected increases in property taxes. Concord is a unique place. It has never just been a bedroom community for people commuting into Boston the way some of the other western suburbs are. It has a sense of history, it has a sense of place, and it has historically had economic and social diversity. I'm concerned that that's being threatened. I've lived in town for 32 years, and I know that still makes me a newcomer. The people who've been here, whose names are on the tombstones in the Revolutionary War cemeteries, I'm still from away in some respects, but I'm very connected to this town, and I really am concerned that some of the things that attracted me here are going to be destroyed by the imbalance we see in the spending and in the growth of revenue. And you cannot control spending unless you look at all the spending and unless you address spending made by the group that covers 2/3 of our budget, and that's the schools.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the auditorium. I see we have someone at the pro
I've got both
microphone.
Both pro and con, so we'll start with the pro.
Okay, so we'll start with pro and then we'll go to con.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Katie Polig from 9 Holdenwood Road.
Can you get a little closer to the microphone there, please?
I'm Katie Polig from 9 Holdenwood Road, and I am a current member of Select Chorus. And unfortunately, if we do not approve this budget, our Performing Arts Department will suffer. Notably, our chorus teacher's salary will be cut by 25%. This will also make cuts to Select Chorus, our gold medal earning choir. The performing arts program has been a critical and really influential part of my high school experience. It's been a place I consistently look forward to going to, and a place where I developed most as a person and a student. So if this budget is cut, we will really suffer. We won't have as many rehearsal blocks for Select that we need to perform well and to achieve our goals. So cutting the budget is not best practice and will not benefit our community and our students. So I urge you to vote yes to the original budget and no to the amendment because of the budget cuts to chorus. Thank you.
Okay, so the pro and con right now refers to the amendment. So if you're against the amendment, you should be at the con microphone. And if you're in favor of it, you should be at the pro microphone. Okay, let's go to the con microphone in the auditorium.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Chris Rettiner, 14 Bristers Hill Road.
Go ahead.
As a family very new to Concord and immediately new to CCHS, I have been awestruck at the quality of the music program here, absolutely amazed. As a child and adolescent psychologist, I am acutely aware of the crisis in mental health that is affecting all of our teenagers. It is well known and documented in literature and through research that music, especially singing, benefits children physiologically, mentally, cognitively, and emotionally. It helps them in their individual identity, it helps them with their social relations, and for many kids, something like a dedication to a program with a coherent community atmosphere will make or break the difference between a happy or a troubled adolescence. So I urge you very much to vote no. It's not that much money to keep in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the people at the question microphone, do you actually have questions?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Come on down.
Yeah, so James Cohane, I live at 44 Central Street.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just two questions that probably had I studied beforehand, I know the answers to, but the proposed budget increase from the school committee is, I believe, 3.08%, is that correct? What is the proposed budget increase for the rest of the town?
Is anybody able to give us that?
Parashar Patel, I think Carrie said 3.26% was the increase for the town. So, and to be very...
Is that blended?
What do you mean blended? I'm sorry.
Between, I'm saying school versus non-school expenses. Can you?
That is the town-only operating budget
Okay,
guidelines,
got it.
right? So that was it. The 3.0 actually doesn't, what they did was they took out the effect of enrollments. I think that's how you arrived at the 3.08%. Is that correct? Because from...
Operational increase.
Well, okay, but let's get... and the reduction in the debt. That's how they got there. So our guideline started with the same 3.26, reducing the debt because the debt assessment was lower. That's how they arrived at the 3.08%. You can compare
Are you
the numbers.
alleging that they're lying, or?
Well,
I
I think
understand.
it's a matter of I think it's a matter of which numbers we're talking about. And if you put up the slide that I had, you will see that with our amendment, the increase from last year's budget, apples to apples, is 3.26%. If you go right there, there you go. So the operating increase is 3.26%. Okay, that's what we're talking about. Their debt service, which is not in the guideline, reduced because we're paying off this building over time. That's the majority of that debt service, by the way. And the assessment is what they're actually seeking, because the assessment is the fee, if you will, that we pay to the regional school district.
I'm afraid I'm confused, but, well, it just strikes me that what the rest of the town is growing by, is that correct?
Well, again, the 3.08, our numbers are 3.26, you saw that there. The way we develop the guidelines, we don't include debt service in either the town nor the high school budget.
Let me just try asking the question again, if you don't mind, sorry, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Can we put that up there just so that, again, we're clear on the numbers?
The percentage increase in the school budget is either it's 3.08 or 3.26.
3.26 for the operating. So one of the things we've got to keep in mind is when the town or the school borrows money, that's capital. And the debt service for capital is not included in the guidelines for large projects like the high school or the middle school, right? So what the Finance Committee looks at operating budget, and if you pull that up, the 3.26% is what the increase is in the operating budget. So you can ask the school committee how they're arriving at 3.08, but when we set the guidelines, this was the increase that we set it at.
Okay, and then,
okay?
And then for the rest of the town, like, I don't know, fire, police, roads and such, what the
3.26%.
3.26.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so this isn't a significant increase relative to the rest of the town, what they're asking for. Is that correct?
I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm not sure how to answer that question.
Well,
I mean, at the end,
what I'm trying to understand is.
Okay, so I think we don't want to devolve into a debate between the two of you here, but let me suggest that there are different ways to calculate the numbers. And the Finance Committee has tried to suggest to you that they've calculated the number differently than the school committee
I'm not
has.
trying to point fingers at anyone. I'm just trying to understand, is what the budget that the school is asking for significantly higher than what the budget that the rest of the town is asking for? That's all.
Go ahead.
Hi, Chris Reynolds. I'm also on the Finance
Okay.
Committee. So on the difference, so if you made them the same, our 3.26 would compare to 3.8 from the school budget. Okay? So if you made them on the same basis, if you adjusted for the debt. So the reason why debt is not in the guideline is because on years when debt is increasing or is being added, that would penalize the school budget, right?
Okay.
Right? So in years when it's coming down, we don't give them the benefit for it in the guideline. So if you did it on a comparable basis, the schools are at 3.8 versus 3.26, so they are above the guideline.
Okay, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next question. Come on down.
Jonathan Abel, 1404 Main Street.
Mr. Abel.
Yes, Mr. Patel raised the issue of increased administrative costs at the schools, and I was wondering if the school committee might confirm or speak to that point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dr. Hunter, do you want to do that?
Certainly, I'm happy to. We've been looking at the structure here at the high school. We did add one assistant principal position because over time, we realized that the ratio of students to administrators was significantly lower than all of our sister schools around us. We also transitioned a department chair position, which was in the bargaining unit, to a special ed administrator, because that was also important to have leadership there that was outside of the bargaining unit. So there have been some evolutions here. That's all part of how we're maintaining almost 60 children in district instead of sending them out for special education services. It's how we responded to the pandemic, the growing mental health needs, and it's how we're dealing with all of the academic gaps that we have continued to close and close and close, is because the leadership has been able to support the staff.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'm hearing like 2 additional administrative positions. That's very different from what I thought I heard, but Mr. Patel.
Yeah, his data went back to 2018 or so. I would have to track all the way back. I'm not clear on where those numbers came from.
You may. You may.
Those numbers are from fiscal year 2018, 2019, fiscal year 29 through 23. They are from the State Department of Education. You can go to their website, happy to provide the data. There's a rich database, basically compared pure administrative ads. No additional teachers, no instructional staff. This is pure administrative staff. Went up from about 10-something to 16-something. It's 5+% FTE increase.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's go to the pro microphone.
David Garrett, 166 Monument Street.
Mr. Garrett.
First, a question for you. Am I allowed to ask a question in addition to making a statement from this microphone?
Yes.
I will finish off.
That's got to be within 2 minutes. Go ahead.
I will finish off with the question. But to start with, I would like to recommend that vote in favor of this amendment. Both the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen are in favor of this amendment. The town needs some fiscal discipline, the Finance Committee is put in place some fiscal discipline. It's not a lot of money, but it's a point of principle. And I strongly advise in favor of this. I really object to the school committee and the principal basically pulling at people's heartstrings and saying they're going to cut, the music program and the computer science thing when they've added all these administrators over the last several years. So please vote in favor of this amendment and start to bring back some fiscal discipline. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will pass on the question.
You passed on the question. Okay, very good. Well, let's go to the con microphone.
Yeah, Jeff Suarez, 45 Oxbow Road.
Mr. Suarez?
I just want to make a note of one of the Finance Committee objectives, which is to maintain the town's character, including economic diversity of residents. It would occur to me that there is no better investment in the long-term character of the town than the schools. The schools are what brings young families to the town, and these families, put their kids through the schools and stay here for the long term. I would imagine there are a lot of people in this room that fall into that category. So it's really puzzling to me why we have to come up here every year and argue about the school budget. When we came here, we support the schools. We support Dr. Hunter, we support the school committee, and it is ridiculous to say that the Finance Committee doesn't have a grudge against the school committee when we're talking about data from 2018 and 5 administrative heads. Like, this just doesn't seem right to me. So I would vote against this amendment and in favor of the budget as is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the auditorium.
Okay, I have
someone
two
at the con.
speakers at the con.
Okay.
Oh,
go
3.
right ahead.
Hi, I'm Bob Fury, and I live in town. And as many of you know, I have been in this building, and the other building that was there, teaching and coaching since 1968. Finally, last year, I stopped everything and I'm retired at the age of 81. We live in town. Our daughter lives in town. She went to the public schools. Our son went to the public schools. Our granddaughters are going to the public schools. You can guess where I'm going to go with this. Once again, I never thought I'd have to get up again after last year and make the same speech. This is not about finances necessarily. You're trying to equate business with education, and there's a big difference. One person in a kid's life here can make a difference to that kid. Education is about a one-to-one relationship between a teacher and a student. And every teacher needs to know every student as individuals. And do all that within a classroom situation. If you're talking about cutting money to the schools, you're talking about cutting money to education, to kids learning, to kids feeling comfortable, to kids finding a place that they belong. You heard the 2 people here who talked about the importance of the music program. This is not about money. The school committee did a great job in doing a level services budget. This last thing came up in a moment, and I've got 5 seconds to say, please defeat this amendment.
Thank you very much. We'll take the next speaker in the auditorium.
Hi, Ralph Reichley, 259 Independence Road.
Yes, sir.
I would like to call a vote on the amendment.
So you'd like to call the question. We do have a bunch of people still in line here, but we have been talking about this amendment let's see, about half an hour now. So I think that this is an appropriate motion for us to hear at this point. This is a non-debatable motion. It requires a 2/3 vote. Those of you who are standing in line, if you want, I guess you can vote on it from standing in line, that's fine. Everyone who would like to proceed to a vote on the amendment, we're not talking about the article now, we're talking about the amendment. Would you like to proceed to a vote on the amendment? Okay, thank you. All those who are opposed to proceeding to a vote? Okay, that definitely carries in the auditorium by, in the gymnasium by well more than 2/3. How about in the auditorium?
Overwhelmingly positive in the auditorium.
All right, we will proceed to a vote on the amendment. So everybody can resume your seats. All those who are in favor of the amendment, please raise your voting slips. The amendment is to reduce the budget by $120,583 from $26,140,908 to $26,020,325. That is the amendment. All right, thank you. All those who are opposed to the amendment, oh, geez, you know, we're going to have to count this. What's it look like in the auditorium?
I believe there are more opposed than were in favor, but I couldn't promise, and I can't see what you've got in the other hall.
Right, okay. All right, so let's try this one more time. Everybody put your slips down. How about, if you are in favor of the amendment, please put your voting slips up.
Yeah, I have more opposed, right? If you are, okay, put those down, thank you. If you are opposed, put your voting slips up. Yeah, definitely more opposed. In the auditorium, definitely more opposed.
All right, so it's very close, but I feel pretty comfortable that the amendment fails. So we will now proceed to open the floor to the motion under Article 20 at the original amount, which was $26,140,908. Is there anybody who wishes to address the main motion under the article? Go ahead. You want to?
In good faith, Adam Snodgrass, 2080 Main Street. I'd like to call the question.
Now, you know, you can't do that because we haven't had any opportunity to talk about it. You can come back in a little while. Question microphone.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Don Kupka, 39 Devon Street, and a member of Finance Committee, but speaking on my own behalf. My question is, and I'm thinking about this for future years as well, is we're looking at the number and we're looking at a declining enrollment. So could the schools please provide for us all the percentage increase on a per pupil basis?
Dr. Hunter, are you able to do that?
Off the top of my head, no, I'm not.
Okay.
So I don't know the precise numbers, but I think it's about 10% per pupil. And I know it's a level services budget, so my question now is, does it really cost 10% more to provide the same service?
Well, I guess I'll give you a little scenarios of what we're experiencing here and other districts are as well. And I'll remind you that all of this is contextual to what we have here in contract with our bargaining units. It's our special needs students and whatever their individual needs are. It's the programming we choose to offer, which for us is a very wide array of options for students so that they can find their niche, build their strengths. And it's all those extracurriculars that we also value outside of the school day. So it really is a choice of what you're looking to offer. I'm delivering the level service program that I believe Concord is expecting and requesting, and this is what level service costs right now.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, I'm Deborah Dorfman, 27 Lang Street.
Ms. Dorfman.
And my question is, in your presentation, you talked about out-of-district placements for students in special education. And I'm interested in knowing how much I have two questions, I guess. One is, how much is the district spending on out-of-district placements as opposed to keeping the students with disabilities here in district in the most integrated setting, least restrictive setting? Yeah, I guess that's the question I have.
Thank you, Dr. Hunter.
Our out-of-district costs at the high school are still significant, much because students who were in the Concord system and we hadn't built our in-house programming yet had gone out of district and may not be able or eligible to return, and a number of other very demanding factors of students with very, very intense needs that are in therapeutic settings, residential settings, et cetera. So we're spending, and Bob Conry's over here, so he can correct me if I'm way off base. It's about $3.5 million in the budget that's going to out-of-district programs. We have built in-district programs here that right now are supporting almost 60 children at minimum, to the point that we are credentialed and respected enough that we are now tuitioning in students from other districts in lieu of them to going to collaboratives or private settings. So there's a lot of moving pieces there, but the goal all along has been to build in-district programs and keep as many children in district. At CPS, there's only 15 students out of district, so the pipeline has shifted considerably, and as those younger children age up, they're going to be able to be accommodated here at the high school and not need to go out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Next question.
Peggy Wargelin, 97 Hillside Ave. The Finance Committee Chair mentioned that you had $460,000 extra the last 2 years or something, like that went into your version of free cash. Could you explain if that's your interpretation of it, and why would you do that?
Sure. So in my time since 2017, we've always contributed to excess and deficiency at the close of the school year and then used it as revenue for the following year. Many years ago, we were taking almost $700,000 and contributing to excess and deficiency to use it as revenue so that we can lower the request to the communities. We're now at $300,000, which means if we don't find a way to have that allocation, which right now we have other ways to do than just drawing off of the operating budget, then we're going to be upping our ask even more than what we brought to you today. So, I think right now it's important to note FY24 is running really tight. It's going to be hard for us to ensure that that contribution is there. So we're looking at all the moving pieces of revenue and trying to be sure that we're adequately going to be able to serve students in a budget that counts on that revenue, which is one reason we're still here talking about this $120, it's really $150,000 when we add Carlisle's piece in. And one last, I think it's really important to note the difference between operational increase and the assessment that Concord's being asked to contribute. Minuteman comes to you with an assessment. They had an operational amount that they needed, and then Concord gets its portion. That's exactly what we're talking about here. The 3.08% is the operational increase to the budget. Yes, the assessment is higher than that because of other factors that come into it, including the debt service. So it's just really important that in the regional environment to note those two very different things.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the pro microphone.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. David Schoenbrunn, 1679 Lowell.
Mr. Schoenberg.
I'd just like to point out that Mr. Weber came forward and presented a motion for $50 million and did not have a schedule for spending, nor a specific detail on the interest rate that we were going to take the loan. Frankly, it left a lot of details out. And yet none of the members of the Finance Committee stood up and even asked a question. And now the school comes up and has a budget that has pages and pages of line items in detail that's been scrutinized through God knows how many meetings that many of us have sat through. And yet now, questions and cherry picking of data come back and forth. I can only think that there is an animosity, for some reason, between the Finance Committee and the School Committee. Perhaps it has to do with the fact that we've overturned the Finance Committee's wishes 3 years running, which at least to me indicates that they're out of touch with the community. So I would ask that we consider going forward making sure that our committees are aligned rather than having animus, lest we face another HR complaint, which might well be justified.
Well, all right, you know, that does not have a whole lot to do with the article. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Patel would like to address the remark about the $50 million borrowing.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So at our Finance Committee public hearing and subsequent meetings, we actually did ask a lot of questions about the 50 million. And the analogy to the 50 million that was authorized is the 100+ million that was authorized for the middle school. Both went forward, and by the way, Finance Committee, many of whose members are sitting here, approved that bond authorization for the middle school. So I take personal umbrage, this notion that we have something against the school committee. And the 50 million is just that, an authorization. And maybe you may have stepped out, but it was made very clear they're going to look at what's required and borrow what's necessary, just like what's happening with the middle school. So to equate the two is apples and oranges, all right?
Thank you very much. Let's go to the con microphone.
Kathy Kukolo, 243 Katarina Heights.
Ms. Kukolo.
I would suggest that you vote against the budget as proposed. The reason for that is you have all of these people working on your behalf. The select board, the school board, and the finance committee. There is a process that's put in place within the town to manage fiscal basis, and we have seen that there's a tremendous amount of expense coming our way. To have these small amounts debated is counterproductive. To throw out that it's going to be the music program is counterproductive. When you have $40 million, you can find a way. And I think it's just throwing in the face of all of these public servants that they're not respected. So I would vote against this.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next person at the con microphone there.
I would just like to say that when the vote is substantial on both sides, I don't think the committees are out of touch with the town.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the pro microphone.
Robert Simon, 13 Davis Court.
Mr. Simon.
Thank you. So this is a relatively small amount of money given how we've allocated things so far. And I detect a very emotional positions on the part of the school committee and the finance committee affecting discipline on the school committee doesn't seem to be very well received. And so it's almost embarrassing to be arguing about this relatively small amount of money. But I want to go on to just tell a short story about my family. And the story that I have is not that different than a lot of other people in the room. So two of my sons graduated from CCHS, and they've both become physicians. And our adopted daughter came here and came to us shortly before she went to high school, and then she went to Concord, Carlisle. This daughter is deaf, and there was no argument about what was the best placement for her. They had a really good program at Newton North High School, and she was allowed to go there. And it cost a lot of money, and not a word of complaint from the schools. And she went on then to college, and we're just ever so grateful for what CCHS has provided for us.
Thank you very much. Next person at the pro microphone.
Casey Atkins, 477 Losbrook Road.
Ms. Atkins.
Thank you. I am the president of the Special Education Parent Advisory Council. I am speaking here on behalf of myself this evening. Is it okay to start with two questions for Dr. Hunter, just to get pieces of information? I know I'm at the wrong.
You may.
Okay. Dr. Hunter, could you just remind us the age that students who are on IEPs and qualify for certain services, is that through 18 or is that 22?
22 by law.
22 by law. And would you be able to provide an average out-of-district placement cost with tuition, what that might look like annually per pupil?
Sure, and again, it ranges greatly, so to average it, I would have to put it in the $150,000 range. We work really hard to work with collaboratives and try to come in well under that, but specialized programs in private settings would certainly be of that amount.
Per student?
Per student.
$150,000 a year per student tuition plus transportation.
Correct.
Dr. Hunter, how many years have you been in the district?
I am finishing my 7th year.
I can speak as a parent in this district that prior to Dr. Hunter, our services, our infrastructure within the school district for specialized education were deeply lacking, and at the cost to taxpayers and to our community who shipped these kids out of district and didn't give them an opportunity to be with their peers. Under Dr. Hunter and previous school committees and finance committees, I should start by saying thank you all for your service. This is a very difficult thing to do, and you do it unpaid and volunteer. But in that time, in Dr. Hunter's tenure, we have built out robust in-district services, which won't be able to accommodate all students just by the nature of disabilities. So I just want to have that piece of information on folks' mind. It is through the age of 22. Age 3 to 22 is the lifespan in the public school district for certain children on IEPs. And it is $150 estimated a year per pupil for an out-of-district placement cost. Just a helpful reminder. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the question microphone here.
Matt Ryan, 45 Staffordshire Lane.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to call the question.
You may. And, you know, I'll tell you what, let's just go to the vote because there's nobody else at a microphone. All right, all those in favor of Article 20 as originally moved, this is at the $26,140,908 level. All those in favor, thank you very much. All those opposed, thank you very much. It passes in the gymnasium by an overwhelming majority. What's it look like in the auditorium?
I would say the same.
Okay. The meeting has voted in favor of Article 20 by an overwhelming majority, and I do so declare. We will resume town meeting tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Thank you very much.